All right. Are you good to go?
Yeah. I see you've been having lots of proxy arguments with everybody. Or I guess I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Because it's not like nobody has original opinions. I don't mean it like that, but...
Listen, I'm not going to lie. I did farm Reddit's, did like the DGG Reddit a little bit. Just a little bit.
Sure.
Well, first of all, I watched your debate with Constantine. I'm just curious, how did you think that went?
I'm probably going to watch the whole thing later and go over it. I mean, I guess about as I expected it to. It's just very, very disappointing, but just it's sad. I feel like when these guys are on, like, there's a reason why these guys all exist in circle jerks, and when they get like the slightest bit of pushback, they just completely fall apart. It's very fucking annoying.
There seemed to be a moment in the debate where you kind of switched gears a little bit, and you were a bit less prone to like try to rattle him. Was that a conscious decision you made, or did you feel like you were?
Well, because it felt like he was
better.
He was about to walk. Like, he put his mic down, and I think there was like 30 seconds where he stopped talking to me, and then he was like self-soothing, trying to debate audience members because he was so traumatized. So I figure we'll just have a bullshit back and forth for the last hour, which was annoying, but yeah.
I mean, do you think there are any like prominent conservatives out there right now that are even capable of having the kind of intellectually honest debate that I assume you would prefer?
No. Because I think the current administration is it's not defensible. You can't, there's no possible way you could ever defend the current administration. So I think it has to be all bullshit. So most of them are smart enough to avoid any type of critical confrontation. And then all the others are going to have the talks, are either getting paid a lot of money to have the talks or are suicidal or whatever. But yeah, most of them are just avoiding those conversations, right? Like, when was the last time you saw Ben Shapiro or any of these people have like a challenging convo that wasn't just them fighting with college kids or something?
I mean, Ben Shapiro, his conversation with Newsome, I thought was overall good. I thought there were a couple. Don't raid. Hang on, Chad. Don't do that. What are you doing? End that raid right now. I'm serious. I'm so serious.
Uh-oh.
Jesus Christ.
Who are they raiding?
HUTCH MF, who's like this gamer, and you're gonna raid him with a bunch of political shit? Don't do that. You're embarrassing me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
shit. I had a friend bring that up. Like, yeah, I didn't know HUTCH did politics. Because is that the guy who plays with like the burnt peanut?
Yeah, and Summit. I feel bad. I feel bad because I know he gets people in his chat that are, confusing him for me. And
yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I don't know. Did you watch the whole conversation that he had with Newsome? It was Newsome and Shapiro.
I didn't watch that one. However, like, Newsome's podcast is, again, that's a place that's a pretty soft. Like, he's not bringing you there to go hard into the paint on things, right? Like, you're going to get a pretty soft conversation with Newsome. I think I watched the whole Bannon one. I watched the Charlie Kirk one. Like, that just seems to be more like a bridge building back and forth kind of podcast that Newsome has going on, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he's looking at the same polls that the strategists are looking at, where the electorate is telling pollsters that they're tired of the partisan bickering, and so I think he's trying to occupy that lane. But he pushed back against Shapiro for 99% of the conversation, not super aggressively, but definitely pushed back against the talking points. And Newsome is very sharp in those kinds of settings, and so
yeah, there's a thing. I would have to watch this, but like. For the current Trump stuff, like, I would have an issue going on to a show and just pushing back and then having it so we both state our arguments and then move on to the next thing, because I think the current stuff is completely and utterly indefensible, and I would want the audience to come away understanding that that's my position. So not like, I think it was bad that ICE basically sent agents to Minnesota, killed 2 U.S. citizens, and then covered for them and got them out of the state. And then for the other guy to be like, well, there a lot of people are being doxxed, and there is kind of a threat to ICE agents right now, and a lot of that is kind of up for debate on whether or not they were allowed or not allowed to execute force there. Like, to come away, to just have that back and forth, and for people to go, well, he gave pushback. I would want to really drill into that. Does that make sense?
Yes. So that was a moment that went a bit viral, and I thought it was a disappointing moment because, Ben baited him by calling out the press office, calling ICE terrorists or something like that. And that was a really perfect opportunity in my mind for him to recenter the conversation in a different way, to say, well, do you want to get mad at like talking like strongly worded tweets, or do you want to talk about what ICE is actually doing? And then you follow it up by doing that. Just felt like a layup, and it felt like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, because people are going to people don't have a mind that are consuming media to appropriately assign magnitude. So if somebody says, you agree that that killing Renee and Alex Petty, these were bad things, right? And the guy's like, yeah, but you also agree that that tweet was bad too. And you're like, well, yeah. Then the audience comes away thinking like, oh, okay, well, both sides agree that there was like a bad thing that happened. And they don't really ascribe an appropriate magnitude to it, which is, why you have to push harder on those issues, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you have someone like Newsome who is going to have a really aggressive media schedule, there's going to be more opportunities for missteps. And so he, unfortunately, is going to be evaluated. Well, first of all, he's not even my first or second or third pick. I don't know if he's electable on a national scale, but it does bother me. And I do feel the urge to jump in and run a little defense when people try to define him with the podcast appearances. Like, I don't know how you feel about it, but it drives me insane these days to see so many people in the kind of populist online left make the claim that Newsome and the Democratic Party have abandoned trans people. Like, that actually drives me fucking insane.
True.
Because
I mean,
if you took even just a couple seconds to look into Newsome's legislative track record in California, it's actually insane. It's like 3 to 4 dozen bills that he signed into law, like really meaningful bills. A lot of these are very, they've helped like thousands and thousands of trans people in this state. And, judging him off of like a 20-second clip on podcast with Ben Shapiro is not surprising behavior from the public, but it's still like on this topic, especially, it's so fucking absurd considering that the Democratic Party is, I would say, like really holding the line on a number of issues. And a lot of these are unpopular, like Mills suing, the state of Maine suing Donald Trump to fight his trans sports ban. That's like a 90-10 issue. And the Democrats are still fighting that fight and winning. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree on any of that. I mean, it's not surprising, though, that people who live purely in kind of like the online discourse world are only evaluating him based on his online discourse, because these people, it seems like they don't really ever talk about actual legislation at all. It's always just their hypothetical perfect legislation. So if it's not single-payer healthcare or a huge wealth tax, then you're basically doing nothing, and then they're just going to evaluate you completely on what you say on podcasts, because the podcast world is the only place these people exist. Not to give an excuse to Billy Jim. It's very annoying, I agree. Yeah.
They're also lying about Newsome, just straight up lying about him. Like, I don't know who first started saying this, but it seems like everybody's now saying it, from that, who's the one girl, the young woman of the Bituation Room? She's been on Piers a bunch. She was a former TYT person.
Is it Francesca?
Yeah. So like Francesca, Jank, Hassan, Kyle Kulinski, they're all claiming that Newsome vetoed single payer in California, which is just that is just something that did not happen. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the next year or two are going to go as we kind of dive in closer to the election, but
yeah, definitely annoying. I don't disagree. I think that one issue, is that I like what Newsome does with his podcast, and I like what Newsome does as a politician. Unfortunately, I don't know if he can do both of those things. Like, I enjoy the idea of somebody has to be able to talk to these people on the other side of the aisle, and we have to show that we can have conversations and all of that. But it's weird to have that person who embodies that also be kind of our mainstream political fighter on the policy and legislative front against the Trump administration as well. It's like, I don't know if he can do both of those things. Even though I think independently, I think both those things are great. I don't know if I would want those embodied in the same person,
It's kind of theoretically impossible.
Yeah,
because
one will kind of undermine the other, seemingly, Even if it doesn't really, like from public appearance, it'll just have the appearance of doing that.
Yeah, it's also because you have to, when you're someone who's running for president, you have to take these really concrete policy positions, and there's no way to thread the needle in a way that's going to make everybody happy. So, one side or another are going to be upset that he picked this policy over that policy. And it's a lot easier to be just like a surrogate or a pundit or a mouthpiece and just kind of scrap with Republicans in a very broad general sense.
Sure.
And so I don't even know if it's theoretically possible to be like a really successful podcast person who everybody likes in that kind of setting, but also, everybody likes their policies. It's just a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah. And maybe contraindicated at times or whatever based on, what the debate is. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you some questions.
Yeah. Wait, I'm trying to remember if I had another thing to say. The lead into this was about Newsome.
And Constantine, the debate.
Constantine, the debate. Yeah, that was annoying. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, go for it. What's the next thing?
Okay. So I have to say I've been a little alarmed because based on my observations, there have been a lot of DGG that I would say are engaging in rhetoric that I think is quite black-pilled and at times sounds very similar to the kind of rhetoric that we heard from the online populist left in their efforts to justify an electoral strategy of, non-participation or voting third party. I've seen some clips of you talking about how you feel about things and talking about policy. It's honestly difficult to know a lot of the times if you're being hyperbolic or if you're being kind of edgy, because there are times, for example, like I've seen a clip of you saying that, it seemed with a great deal of sincerity, you were saying that we need to find a way to arrest and imprison every current Republican that's serving in government right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, so I guess like a good place to start the conversation would just be to evaluate like what you think of the current political zeitgeist. So just like 1 year into Trump 2.0, like how would you say you're generally feeling about things?
I mean, I would say generally I'd feel absolutely horrible in terms of like all the things that Trump has managed to accomplish so far and undermining our relationships with other people around the world and the terrorists and the expansion of presidential power and all that. I imagine we probably feel similarly on that, but I'm guessing you're angling more at the, don't you feel like people are en masse rejecting this and we're going to do well in the midterms? Like that kind of perspective, or?
We can get into that. I mean, I just, it's wherever your thoughts go with it. Just,
I mean, I feel really horrible. I feel like there's been a lot of, the American public has an appetite for kind of authoritarian behavior to a much greater extent than I ever thought. And the fact that Trump was able to staff the government with so many sycophantic people to kind of go with him on this, I think is pretty sad and pathetic. The extent to which, I mean, it's just like so much stuff. We're a year and a month in or whatever, and it's just been like thing after thing after thing after thing of insanity.
Yeah, I guess my observation is that when I hear, so I obviously, I don't know, I'm getting older, and I've been in a relationship for like 10 plus years, and like one of the things that you work on is trying to identify what is behind the emotion that you're immediately being confronted with. So I'm trying to focus on the fact that, people have every right to feel angry and afraid about this administration.
Sure.
And all of that is obviously like eminently valid. I think I take a little bit of a different view here because that kind of take doesn't feel holistic enough to encompass like how things have shifted since the 2024 election.
Okay.
I feel like a lot of people got stuck in a kind of stasis, like an emotional and mental stasis in the immediate aftermath. Because right after the election, for me, what I was afraid of was, holy fucking shit, like not only did he win the election again, he won the popular vote for the first time Republicans done that in, I don't even
decades,
remember the last time. Maybe was it George W. Bush in 2004, I think was maybe the last time. And so I was worried that this was just what the country was turning into. All of the resist lib stuff from the first term, the kind of peak woke era, all that, that was just a mirage and a temporary distraction. And now we're kind of like really revealing who we are as a country. That was my immediate concern. And then over the last year, a lot of things have happened that have made me feel not like less vigilant about Trump and what he can do with power and all the damage that he can do, but certainly better about the short-term path that we're on.
What makes you feel better, I guess?
It's a combination of things. Like I would say first and foremost on the list of things that make me feel like hopeful and bullish on America's prospects, that we can kind of get back to normal. And I think I define normal as like not feeling like I have to worry about whether or not my country is going to last as a constitutional republic. Like that's how I would define normal in this context. But the first thing on the list would be the electoral results over the last year. The special election margins have been just truly insane. I don't know if you saw the results from last night, but another really good night for Democrats. We flipped a red seat in Arkansas, overperformed by 23 points relative to 2024. Not only that, I'm also encouraged by the candidates that are seeing success within the Democratic Party. Like I think Mamdani is a really impressive person who, earned my respect in a lot of ways. I think he's been really savvy, both with his campaign and the way he's been governing. I'm also equally impressed with Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and Spanberger in Virginia. Not only did they put up really impressive margins, but they are governing very aggressively and using that power to do policies that I consider to be quite good. So that to me just really, really matters. Like the electoral success of Democrats, the candidate quality. It doesn't look like we're having like a Tea Party revolt within the party right now. Like last night, there was a Bernie endorsed candidate who lost against a, kind of so-so incumbent. And so I'm not as worried about that kind of chaos. Maybe it looks like it's going to be a little bit more cohesive going into the midterms in 2028. And then also it's just, and then I'll finish up here, but like the two things that make me feel bullish right now are these results. And then also I'm looking at the response from the people. So, this term, even though they're not covered as much, there have been more protests this term than there were by this point in the second term than there were by this point in the first term. I look at No Kings protests. I went to that protest. That was the largest protest I've ever been to. It was nonviolent. It was like kind of joyful and hopeful, and that kind of gave me some energy. I look at Minnesota, the people of Minnesota. I thought that was exceptionally brave and inspiring. I felt like they were like lighting the beacons of Gondor for the rest of the nation. An American was shot and killed, and then thousands of people took to the streets. Another one was killed, and then thousands more, tens of thousands, were marching in sub-zero temperatures. And they didn't get the administration to completely pull out of Minnesota, but they got, there was a major drawdown there. So I have other reasons too, but those are the things that stick out to me for why I'm optimistic.
So I guess there's like a couple big things that I am very scared about. So one is that it's not good enough to course correct when the course was so far off in the beginning when it shouldn't have been. One thing I used to complain about for Vosh that Vosh would do is, and other people do this too, is you'll hop on a breaking news story. It's the information that's coming out initially is not correct, but they get to collect all of the centrist podcaster people are doing this right now. You get to collect all the virtue from having Trump on your podcast and all of the excitement and the audience and the clicks and the views, even though he's obviously fucked and there's a whole bunch of horrible stuff about this guy that everybody should be able to see prospectively, okay? Not retrospectively, we should be able to see it at the time that he's saying that this is going to be really bad. And then, so they get to collect all of that, and then once Trump goes really bad, as any honest actor could have seen, these aren't hard predictions. You don't have to be Nostradamus to see that the guy who's saying he's going to tariff the entire world ends up tariffing the entire world, right? That now they're saying, well, I think that Trump is not good for this stuff. I disagree with this stuff. And now the audience is like, oh my God, like, well, he's an honest actor. It's cool that he actually is admitting that he was wrong on this, and it's like, no, that's not good enough. Like, this is stuff that we all could have seen ahead of time. Why did it take so long for us to finally course correct, Like, so I guess, one is like the course correction is not good enough. There are some things that you can course correct on. Like, I'll be sympathetic to people who supported Trump in the first term, because I think there was enough ambiguity there that who knows, maybe it could have gone good, maybe not. But by the second time you're supporting him, there's something that is extremely broken with you as a commentator, political pundit, whatever. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there. This is going to get more into, I imagine, what we'll talk about later, the consequences part. It's not checks and balances when you continue to fuck around. You try to destroy rule of law and and corrupt the system as much as you can, and then the government is told to stop by the courts, and so then you kind of stop, but you get to collect all the benefit of the bad shit that you did, and then look for another way to fuck with the system. Being fully open and transparent that you're simply just trying to fuck with the system. That's not a good state of affairs either. So, like, seeing America saying, wow, actually Trump is really bad. Like, here's the one thing. Okay, there's a third point too. The instability of it all is also insane. right? Like, what does the rest of the world look at the United States and they go, you really needed Trump a second time to see how fucked he is? That's not comforting at all to any other country on the planet. And then kind of a final question to wrap up all three of these. A question for you. Let's assume that the economy was going really well for whatever reason. Maybe the AI stuff was doing even better than we thought it would, and it's buoying the entire economy and job markets, everything else. Do you think the American public would be turning their back on Trump right now, or do you think it would just carry on business as usual, irrespective of all the insane shit he's doing domestically and internationally?
Well, just to hit your last question first, yes, I do. But I don't think that it would be at the same margins. So his approval rating in the aggregate right now for G. Elliott Morris's new aggregate, he left 538. Now he does a new thing called 50+1. Trump is down to, I think, 38 or 39.
Sure.
So maybe that would be like a few points higher. And
just a
but
few
my
points
reasoning
higher? Do
for
you really
that
think
is-
so?
Yeah, I do. And my reasoning for that is we can just take a look at the first term.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first term, the economy was doing really well. And like, especially in those first few years before COVID came around, that was massively disruptive. But even in the context of COVID, like people made it out like pretty well, all things considered, when COVID was happening. The average family, the median family, saw their net wealth go up in 2028 because we had such generous stimulus programs in this country relative to other countries. And even despite all that, even despite people's net wealth going up in 2020 and a really strong economy that had basically at that point fully recovered from the recession by the time it was passed off from Obama to Trump, his approval rating went down a lot like during that time. It was pretty volatile. I mean, it was starting to rebound slowly by the time we got to COVID, and then it just crashed back down again because he was so fucking incompetent. But that was the public voicing their disgust with the way that he was conducting himself. I mean, I don't know if you remember vividly the first term. I do. I mean, like, he kicked it off by like firing Comey. That was a big scandal.
Sure, but I know that his vote changes a little bit, or the popularity changes a little bit with moderates and then with Democrats. But my understanding is for his first term, that the Republican approval, I think at one point it might have dipped to 89, but I think otherwise it was 90 plus basically the entire time.
Right, but you're talking about the Republican voter base. And
Yeah.
I think that is a mistake to restrict the analysis to just Republicans. Like, we can't really do much about enthusiastic Republicans. Maybe there's a candidate like Tallarico, for example. I think there's a lot of interesting potential there. If he is to win that seat in Texas, he's going to have to, mathematically, peel away Trump voters.
Sure, but I think I would feel really depressed, I guess, if our analysis for feeling good about the future of the United States already begins with a priori writing off half the country, or a little bit like close to half the country, because we just consider them a lost cause.
Well, I mean, it just depends. It's a case by case. I'm not saying that you should entirely write Republican voters off. If there is a way to message to, get them to be open to supporting a Democrat, and we can get into Tallarico. I think I find him just really fascinating. I think there's a lot of potential there. He's running more kind of nonpartisan. He's doing populism, but he's framing it in a more biblical, kind of soft, less brain rot kind of way. As opposed to like Plattner, who's doing the kind of traditional brain rot populism. And so I think that there is potential down there to peel voters back. And so I'm not saying entirely write them off, but if I were to evaluate the state of the country purely based on looking at Republican voter base, I agree. I would be extremely depressed and feel totally hopeless as to, where the country is headed in the short term. But I wouldn't do that because I don't understand the point of doing that. Why would you do that? If we're talking about the possibility of getting past this moment, that will necessarily mean like winning more elections. And if you just look at the state of things right now, electorally, the Republican Party are pretty fucked, like really fucked. Like there's over 36 congressional Republicans that have resigned. That's a lot. That doesn't happen unless they think that they're heading towards a catastrophe in November.
Yeah, but I don't think winning the election is the thing that I'm looking at. I would say that the fact that we elected Trump a second time, I think, is a historic failing up there with any crazy, horrible things the United States has done. So that's already like a major hit against us. And the fact that it's taken so much for people to be like, oh, maybe this Trump figure, not the best. It's taken like this guy has gotten 100 different actions that would all be considered, like administration ending scandals. And it's just like another Tuesday for this dude. So I don't know, the idea that like, well, we might win the next election. I guess what I'm looking at more, what I would consider a victory, isn't winning the election, but it's looking at the causes that got us here to where like, how could we ever elect this person, and then making sure that those don't come up again in the future. And I don't know if like just the midterms here or just 2028 is good enough. Like I don't see like a fundamental reshuffling of the Conservative Party. Because why would they, right? If this kind of insane behavior has gotten them this many wins, like what incentive do they have to change?
So I agree with that, just so you know, and I think we should get into that more, get into more specifics. But before we even get to that conversation, I just want to ask you, like very specifically, like how do you evaluate the current moment for the United States? Like, have we already succumbed to fascism, or are we on an intractable path to fascism? Are we on a path to fascism that we could avoid? Like I mean, I guess when I look at the United States, when I think of fascism, I think of fascism as like obesity, and the United States is like a very athletic and very fit person. But for the past like 4 years, we've like pigged the fuck out on donuts and hot chocolates. So are we obese yet? No, because we started off with an incredibly fit and incredibly resilient body, or structures and institutions. The United States had them, a resilient economy, resilient institutions with different checks and balances that are all good. But we're on that path for sure. Like left unobstructed, that would be where we would go to, like 100%. I usually don't love your analogies, I have to be honest, but that one was pretty good. But I think like in the context of that analogy, I feel like a lot of the solutions that I'm hearing from, and it's not just DGG and you. I mean, there's a lot of liberals, it seems, that are becoming radicalized in this moment. But if I use your analogy, I feel like a lot of the solutions that are being proposed are, jumping straight to like major surgery and liposuction and tummy tucks and all these kinds of things before you've even, gone on Ozempic. If you can follow my drift here.
Yeah. So if we want to follow the analogy, it's kind of like when you're pre-diabetic, you can make it needs to be drastic lifestyle changes to bring your insulin sensitivity back down or up, I guess, in order to make it so you can live a normal life. Once you're into the diabetic territory, though, and you've had to start like metformin or whatever, then that's it. You're going to be diabetic for the rest of your life. You can't reverse it with diet at that point. So you kind of have to make some extreme dietary changes once you're in that pre-diabetic stage, because you have to bring your stuff down so that you don't fucking kill your pancreas that creates insulin. That ends up becoming overworked once you're diabetic. So I feel like we're straining this analogy a bit, but like not getting into like the changes that we need to make. I'm just saying that when you ask me, are we fully fascist yet? I would say no, but it's not for a lack of trying. It's just because the current people that are there right now have like a very resilient system that they were up against coming into things. But this isn't any principled part on behalf of the American public or anything like that. It's just because of how sturdy the system was with Trump coming into office.
What do you mean it isn't because of the like a principled public? What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
As in, the American public would have had an appetite for so much worse had there not been so many structural structural walls placed in front of this administration. So, for instance, like the indictments related to Comey, Bolton, James, like the American public doesn't even know our legal system that well. I don't think give a fuck that much about any of this. But because there are institutional hurdles, because they have to get prosecutors appointed the correct way, and they've got to secure indictments the correct way, this ended up not happening. But that wasn't because the American public saw that it was wrong and evil. It was because of our system.
Well, on this specific issue, I don't know how many Americans were moved away from potential support for Trump or material support for Trump because of those indictments. Mm-hmm. But what is clearly happening right now with the electorate, they are speaking very loudly, very clearly. They're talking to pollsters, they're voting. There is a perception right now from this administration that they are entirely corrupt. And I think like the tip of the spear of that sentiment that's out there right now is the Epstein stuff, which I would argue is probably like, the least important thing among all the issues of like him being completely corrupt and illiberal. That's probably like not even in the top 10, but that's a story that has broken to the mainstream and captured a lot of people's imagination, and it feeds into a lot of like latent conspiracy mongering kind of behavior from a lot of Americans that we've seen increase in the last decade. But there's no mistake. Like it's like death by a thousand cuts. Like,
Yeah. But while I agree with
each individual action alone isn't enough to necessarily like sink this administration. But when you put them all together and you look at the totality of the destruction of the corruption, American voters are expressing en masse disgust with this administration over this corruption.
I agree with you there, but a thing that I'm worried about, and I don't know if this is a story told in polls yet or if they're going to begin polling on this, what I worry about is the Trump administration is not undermining the Trump administration. They're just further undermining people's view of government completely. So one of the things that I worry about with regards to the Epstein stuff, regardless of how people feel about it, is that when Americans have strong feelings, I'm vibing this, by the way, so if there's polling data that shows me that I'm wrong, I would be happy if that was the case. But my feeling is when an American cares strongly about the Epstein stuff, they don't care because they feel like the Trump administration is corrupt. They just think that everybody is corrupt, that they're all in cahoots with each other. So when Trump continues to take actions that are damaging U.S. perception of the government, that even if this is hurting the popularity of the current regime, we've seen that the Democrats are still polling pretty low in popularity. It's just reinforcing people's opinions that, oh, I guess the whole system is just broken and corrupt, which I think is also bad. It's not helping us at all.
I don't think that you're wrong, that there's a lot of that. It might even be a plurality or a majority of Americans that see it in that context. I wouldn't fight you on that. But I do think that it is a generalization. And I do think that there's a significant chunk of the country that understands the distinction between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party right now. Is it 10%? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? I can't give you those numbers. I'd be interested to look into that because I'm sure there's been some polling to like look into this. But you're speaking to the kind of like the reason why populism is like hitting so hard these days with candidates like Plattner and Tallarico and a lot of right-wing populists as well, is this like anti-establishment sentiment that's been boiling for really like the last like 10 to 15 years. I think it really kicked off after the bank bailouts. I feel like that was like the real seeds of this, of when it like really kind of sprung into existence.
Sure.
By the time that Trump ran. But there's enough people in the country that can recognize the difference between like that can see what's happening, and they do understand that this administration is uniquely corrupt and the Republican Party are uniquely compromised. I think that's why we're seeing the kind of, I mean, what do you make of the crazy margins from Democratic Party candidates in the last year?
I mean, I think people are seeing that the current administration isn't working. So then they're voting for the other party, which is good. Like, I mean, we've been killing it in special elections, but I mean, we also kill it in, I mean, arguably even for the Biden midterms, right? Like people were predicting that huge red wave and it would be a disaster for Biden, and that never came. And then I think special elections, I think under Trump's first term, I think we tended to overperform in, but none of that kept Trump from winning in term two. I don't know if this is representing like a significant evolution of American thought about what our political system needs to look like, rather than, listen, I'm glad we're winning elections, but if it's just a reaction to the current administration, largely on domestic economic grounds, which is what I feel like it still is, right, then who's to say that they're not just going to swing back come 2028 or 2030? You
can't. Nobody can promise that. And when
but
you
that's
said
the
that
fight,
you
that's
need,
the fight that I think is really important. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I agree with you that you need drastic measures to address the rot that's happening in this country right now. I don't dispute that at all. I think the difference between you and me is what those drastic measures look like. When I think of drastic measures, I'm not thinking about, extrajudicial or extra constitutional, Nuremberg 2.0 stuff. I'm thinking about reforms. Like I'm thinking about winning enough elections to build a big enough mandate and build enough consensus to actually pass reforms like we've done many, many, many times in this country. We'll have these moments where we're backsliding, and then we introduce reforms and things get better. And then something else comes along at some point, challenges the country. I think Trump...
Can you just, real quick, when you... So I'm not trying to debate Lord you on this, but when you say like, what is your, in your mind, when you're thinking like, things were bad and then there were reforms and they made things better, what are you thinking about there? Or like, what in your mind is...
The thing that sticks out to me, I mean, there's a lot that you could go to, but like the thing that sticks out to me are the post-Nixon reforms. That did lead to a more functional DOJ. That did lead to the public having more faith in those institutions at a time when, Nixon really kind of shattered Americans. I think a lot of young people maybe don't really quite understand how traumatic Watergate and Nixon was, because he went from being one of the most popular presidents literally in U.S. history to this like disgrace, and they felt totally betrayed. His corruption being laid bare in the way that it was, and it was such a unique situation too, because he literally recorded himself in the fucking Oval Office having these like explicitly corrupt conversations. And in the years that followed, they codified some of these reforms. They adopted some of these reforms in an informal kind of way, like with the independent nature of DOJ, which is, I'm sure, is going to come up in the context of this conversation. But that did help things quite a bit. That did help get us back on a better path. That didn't mean we didn't have problems, but like we moved away from that level of explicit corruption.
Yeah.
And now Trump is challenging our institutions again. Yeah.
So I don't disagree with you on that necessarily. However, I think one of the big differences is that everybody in the country realized that Nixon was in the wrong, or most people realized like Nixon is in the wrong, right? He was impeached. He had to be pre-pardoned basically by Ford, because of the expectation that there would be crimes that would follow, that he was being investigated by the FBI. And we look at the difference between that and Trump, where Trump didn't need a pardon or pre-pardon himself. Instead, he got immunity from crimes from the Supreme Court. And rather than the whole country realizing like, ooh, this Nixon shit was pretty fucking bad, and he got impeached and everything over it, we have, I think there was only one person in the current cabinet that was willing to admit during their Senate confirmation hearings that Trump even lost the 2020 election. I think it was one person. I don't remember who. It might have been Dr. Oz. I don't know. I don't think Oz is cabinet level, right? I don't remember who it was. But like nobody was even willing to admit that the president lost that election. I think that is a significant difference in terms of how the American public saw these situations. So when you look at Nixon, I'm like, okay, sure, I can buy you there. But there's been no recognition of wrongdoing from the Trump guy.
No, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, right? I mean, like, I have a sense of why that is. Why do you think like I just looked it up, and Nixon's approval rating was 24% by the time he resigned. So he did plummet in popularity, and Watergate was not something that just happened overnight. It was something that played out, I think, over the course of like over a year. It was like drip, drip, drip. Like new information like every month came out, and it just got worse and worse for Nixon. It just looked worse and worse. And then you had like, was it the Friday Night Massacre or the Saturday Night Massacre, whatever that was? But what do you think was different back then compared with now? Like, I'm thinking of a couple things in particular here.
Well, I'm going to give a very boring answer that's just broad and is unsatisfactory, but I think that the news media that we live in right now, because all of us get we all have our own little experience machines that we jump inside when we want to consume media, makes it easier to avoid uncomfortable things, and you can have your own kind of reality served up to you, slopped up to you to make you feel fine. So in the past, news is going to be probably a medium friction environment. Like, you're going to see headlines that make you feel good. You're going to see headlines that make you feel bad. You're going to see a variety of things because you've got to turn on TV and that's it. You don't get to DVR and choose every program you get to watch, or have a internet algorithm feed you exactly the pundits that you want to see and exactly the times you want to see them and exactly the clips that you want to see of them. And nowadays you get to live in a totally different reality. It was probably harder to be in a different reality back then, so you kind of had to confront the fuck shit a little bit more. I agree. Probably one of the largest things. Okay, yeah.
I agree. I think it's social media, and I think it's the rise of 24-hour partisan news networks that really changed fundamentally the landscape. Like, if Nixon had Fox News and Benny Johnson and fucking Steven Crowder back then, who knows if his popularity would have dipped even below like 50%.
Yeah.
But these are things that, it's not going to be easy, but these are things that you can reform if you really wanted to within a liberal framework. What is, I guess, like this, the logical question here, and I'm not baiting you to like Fed post or anything.
Wait here,
like
before we get to the Fed post part, I think another thing that is important is when you talk about reforming the system and everything, like we're talking about meaningful reforms that can meaningfully change the way that our government functions for the better. I don't know if I can think of a single thing that would have mattered for this current administration, because this was not an administration that was trying its best to be creative and to work within kind of what was left with it. This is an administration that is in full revolt against the established order. And sometimes I feel like this happens a lot with the January 6th stuff. Whenever you debate for the 5% of people that fucking know anything about it, when you debate people that know anything about it and they're committed to the Republican dick suck side, and you ask them, like, they were trying to break the law when they were doing the the whole electoral scheme and everything. Their response, do you know what their response is? Have you ever debated somebody on this?
I have, but
Their
I'm
response,
not really.
oftentimes their response will be, well, didn't they change the ECA afterwards? Didn't they update the legislation afterwards, right? Well, who cares? Like, they might have clarified some language, but if you read any of the emails from Eastman, from Chesborough, from any of these guys going into it, they all knew they were breaking the law. That's why they said the vice president has the constitutional authority to do this. Whenever they said constitutional authority, they were saying that because he could usurp the ECA as being unconstitutional. So they knew they were breaking the law. So I don't like this response of, in order to counter what the Trump admin has done, we need to do a whole bunch of reforms and to pass new stuff, because the current administration is lawless. And the idea of passing new laws to make sure this stuff doesn't happen in the future, I just think I think it's, not only do I think it's not satisfactory, I think it's actually damaging to the American mind, because it implies that the current administration is doing what they can because they can get away with it, as opposed to what they actually are doing, which is just acting lawlessly.
Okay. How much of your issue is with the system itself, or versus how much of it is with like the voters? Because we do have a functional system. I tend to think that there are problems with the judicial system in this country. I do think there are still like lingering systemic problems and imbalances that need to be addressed. However, it's a pretty decent system. Like, I like the fact that there's a high threshold to convict someone and deprive them of their liberty and send them to jail. And you have to go through this process that have all these like layers of accountability and these mechanisms for people to democratically address possible problems within that system. And that system was working by the time Donald Trump was elected in 2024. But what happened when the voters chose him in 2024 was that they were essentially saying, we don't think that he should be held accountable for those crimes, or we don't think he did crimes. And, that effectively ended those processes. But he had already been found guilty of, 32 felonies. I don't know if he would have been, sent to jail, or if it would have been some kind of cushy, home confinement situation. He was facing down some very difficult charges to beat in Florida. There was reporting last week to indicate that he was privately telling people that Jack Smith had him dead to rights in Florida. I do think Jack Smith was probably going to be successful in the January 6th trial in the DC jurisdiction. I think probably that Georgia trial would have been successful as well. And the problem there was that it just happened too late. Like, Merrick Garland didn't do the wrong thing when he appointed a special counsel. That is the right thing for the DOJ to do. What he did wrong was he waited way too long. I mean, they had him. Yeah. They had Donald Trump dead to right. They knew he was lying about the classified documents. They knew that he was telling his subordinates to destroy evidence. They knew that 4 or 5 months into Biden's presidency. And I can't put myself into the mind of Merrick Garland, but I assume he was being really vigilant and giving Trump as many opportunities as he could to avoid the appearance of political influence in that investigation. That, I think, that was a massive, massive, massive blunder. Apart from that, Merrick Garland was a completely competent, professional, excellent attorney general. Apart from that decision, his decision to, try to avoid the appearance of political influence to that degree is the reason why Donald Trump ultimately was not held accountable and will likely not be held accountable for those previous crimes. And so, to try to get at your point of what kind of reforms could have prevented Donald Trump from doing the stuff that he's doing, I can think of some reforms that would help right now, and we can get into that. But ultimately, that was a problem of the electorate themselves, and there's that's a complex topic too. But I want to let you.
I guess when we talk about the system, in terms of the governmental system, I think it's fine. But our issue is that we have a lot of different systems working together, where I think the incentives are all heavily skewed. I prefer to think that most of the people are rational actors and aren't just acting compulsively or with some crazy emotional bend, and that most people are just kind of following, as I said, where the incentives align. So when I look at how Fox News acted with respect to the Dominion stuff, right, that was a pretty exceptional thing in Smartmatic, that they thought that it was beneficial for them to lie on behalf of Donald Trump to either curry favor with him or because they thought that that's what their audience wanted to hear. So we have a huge issue with our media environment, such that, when I talk about normal people, I wouldn't expect an ordinary person to be able to sort through almost any major media topics today. It's just too much, right? An ordinary person can be super well informed on pharmaceuticals or Iran or whatever. It's just not. So you need the media to kind of break down these topics for you. And the media, the alt media especially, but even the mainstream media to some extent, seems to kind of have abandoned their role here. So that's one huge failure. And then the question is why Why does that incentive exist? Should there be? This is a part where that might be ripe for legislation, where maybe we need to regulate these environments better. I don't think the American people would go for it. We have a very naive and childlike concept of freedom of speech. So I don't think that there's going to be an appetite there for that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is like the lawmakers, the politicians themselves. Why do they feel like they can lie or assist Trump with acting lawless with impunity? For the Jan 6 stuff, there were a lot of lawmakers that were basically going along with them. They agreed that they would object in the, I think it's in the Senate, right? You had to object in the Senate to certify your vote. Yeah, all of the people doing that were part of the insurrection. They knew that there were no good grounds here to object on. They just did it in the hopes that they were buying time or some bullshit would happen, right? Why do they feel like, and all the people that can lie on behalf of this administration, all the cabinet members that are acting with wild impunity, why do they all feel like they can lie and get away with it? Whatever is driving that incentive like needs to be changed too. Like that's not good. And I mean, for the president himself, right? We actually have literal criminal immunity now, and he's also a lame duck, so he's not going to be elected again. But I mean, I feel like the president also feels like he can act with impunity. So yeah, all of the intent. Yep. So when I talk about like, I guess like 2028 or 2030, and you tell me that you're happy that like we're kind of winning in the polls, that's fine. But I don't see any of these incentives changing, especially if the thought is like, well, we just need a new law to prevent what Trump did from happening again. Well, if the incentives are still there, I would expect them to do the exact same thing. They should if they're rational actors. And I just haven't heard or seen anything that would discourage the same type of behavior from happening again come next election cycle.
I think it's generally good to be forward thinking about these things. I don't think I disagree with anything you just said right there. Mm-hmm. I think I'm completely on the exact same page about what these problems are and the conundrum of uncertainty of just like not like, what do you do about that? Like it has to be addressed in some way. I completely agree with you. I suspect the bulk of our disagreements are going to be with the specific prescriptions here. And I can't even promise you that I wouldn't commit to saying that I would be opposed to everything that you are proposing here. But whenever I get into these kinds of conversations, and especially with when I have like DGG people in my chat, there's like I don't know if it's because they don't want a Fed post or they don't want to break TOS, but it's all very vague. Like I don't even know what I'm possibly agreeing with versus disagreeing with, because all I get, there's a lot of like very general statements, and people will say like, well, Hutch, you just don't have the fucking balls to do what needs to be done right now.
Sure.
And sometimes they'll get kind of more LARPy with it, with their rhetoric. And I'm asking you, and this is a serious question, like at that point, how, like, what's the strongest argument for that person, not simply just doing what's in the Basil tweet about, Minecrafting a wall, talking about like Minecrafting a Walmart and then not actually Minecrafting a Walmart. It's just,
what's the incentive for them to not? Oh, yeah. I mean, I understand that, but I guess the frustrating part is that it feels like on the other end, like the Republicans don't ever have to Fed post because they don't have to go and do that to the Walmart. Literally, ICE will go do that to the Walmart. So they have like the power of the government, right? Like we have to be very careful how we talk about like the fact that you're saying Minecraft stuff, right? Like if I were to talk about killing like somebody in Congress, like that's kind of a crazy thing to say, and I run the risk of, well, not getting demonetized, but I get banned on YouTube, right? Like I can't say anything like that. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is literally retweeting that like 6 members of Congress should be fucking executed, right? I think that when you have an asymmetry like that, then you have to make a lot of room for understanding why people would be so fucking ass-pained. Like, it's very crazy to me that the president of the United States and then all the little sycophants around him can Fed post and then Fed act so insanely hard, so over the line, but like we have to be careful that we don't say things that are just like impolite or breaking norms. I didn't actually justify anything right there. I guess I just explained for why some people are irritated about it. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I've disagreed with anything that you've said so far.
Sure.
We would have to get into some kind of specifics, and I do urge you to be a little cautious here because I don't want to get TOS. But
obviously, we know there is no violence. We shouldn't encourage it. Actually, I don't even mean to. I'm not saying this because I legitimately, as somebody that goes out and does events, I don't want to live in a politically violent environment. That's a risk to my own health. So
yeah.
Also, I've even noticed my community is a little bit crazy. I probably have a talk with them because I do feel like we're getting a little bit school shooter vibes on my subreddit a little bit. People need to calm the fuck down. But man, it is hard when you see like federal cops fucking murdering American citizens, and then all the Republicans are like cheering it on, and it's like, holy fuck! It's a very, 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 very fucked world to live in. But not necessarily to excuse it, but just to where the sentiment comes from. Yeah, I'm sure you don't disagree with that even. Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, I would say that I've definitely mellowed out in my elderly years, but there have been moments in this administration where I have very Minecrafty thoughts. I start imagining, like, what would I do if I had Homelander's powers? And it gets really fucking dark. So I that feeling of anger and rage, I understand that emotion. I try to push back against the idea that, I mean, I generally don't think that human beings are at their best decision-making capabilities when they're in that kind of state of mind. And I think it's easy to get attached to that rage because maybe it makes you feel more powerful in a time where you feel powerless.
Sure.
But I think if you stay in that place of rage, I just it's been my experience from personal experience that this doesn't lead to the best judgment. And
so I can.
You were talking about
real quick because I'm sympathetic with what you just said there, right? So I can speak from personal experience as well. Like, I'm the kind of person who needs. I need some time to chill if I'm having a fight, because I'm just never going to be able to resolve things well, because I just can't do it. So I need like 6 to 8 hours to calm the fuck down, and then after that I can be like super duper chill. Okay. One issue though that I've noticed sometimes with partners that I have to be very careful of is that they might be mad in the moment. I might say I need like 8 hours to chill the fuck out. And then after the 8 hours is gone, I'm chilling, I'm ready to have the conversation, but they might be over it and they don't care anymore. And then we just actually never have a conversation. So like, I get to basically skip out on all of that, which is like a kind of a win for me, because I'm like, oh, cool, I don't have to deal with this shit. But then when the issue comes up again, we're going to run through that same pattern of like, well, hold on, I need 8 hours to chill. And they're like, well, I'm really fucking mad now. Okay, well, let's chill. And then it never actually gets discussed. And I feel like we almost are sort of seeing that play out, where it's like, okay, fine, they took Garland from us for a Supreme Court pick, but we got Biden was elected and it's okay. Or like they took Gore, right, from the Supreme Court again for the Florida election, but that's okay because we got Obama eventually. Like, we're playing this pattern out over and over and over again where nothing of substance is actually being dealt with, because we're just like, well, at least we won this election so we can put it off for the future and never actually discuss it at all.
I fiercely identify with what you're talking about with the couple stuff. I feel like you're ADHD as well, right?
Sure, yeah.
I think my partner's reading a book on ADHD because I got a diagnosis like 7 months ago or something. And apparently ADHD people experience emotions on average, like in a more heightened way. And I'm kind of the same way, where if I get worked up, I can get really, really worked up. And sometimes I will want to regulate and I'll take a walk outside, but my fucking brain is doing the monologue or a pretend dialogue, and I'm just getting myself more and more angry. And so sometimes it'll take me like several hours to calm down. I don't know how to. I think the problem right now, and the reason why people are feeling so radicalized, is like a combination of a lot of different things. It's a combination of like what Trump is actually doing with power, and it's been quite horrifying. It's also you're describing a kind of a lack of faith in the American public right now.
Yeah.
And what I think gets lost in these kinds of conversations a lot of the time is it's not that there's a significant percentage of the country that are like really rigidly attached to Donald Trump for ideological reasons.
I agree.
think it's the case. I think it's the case that probably somewhere between 50 and 65% of the country are largely disengaged from politics. And to the extent that they do engage with politics, it's in a very superficial kind of way. As something pops up on their TikTok feed, they talk to a coworker or, a family member about it, but they're not thinking about politics actively in the way that you and me and people in our audience do. I mean, I think about politics many hours every day. It's like literally my job at this point. And
sure, I don't disagree with you, but I think that there's something to be said for an indifference that's almost as bad, right? To use a classic rape analogy, right? One person is raping or sexually abusing somebody, and 9 people are standing by watching, and it's like, holy shit, this is terrible. And it's like, well, it's not like all of them were participating. And it's like, okay, maybe not, but Jesus Christ, like, I would expect in the United States of America that we wouldn't stand by and listen to our leader threaten to invade allied countries. That would just be a non-starter. We wouldn't do that. Or that we would attack our trade relationship with our two closest and largest trading partners, Canada and Mexico, or that we would commit ICE to doing the actions that they are against U.S. citizens. Like, that would be a thing where it's not enough to just say, well, it's not like Americans support Trump ideology. Because I agree with you there. I don't think it matters that much. You can see, obviously, with stuff like the war with Iran, right? We've gone from the president of no new wars to the president of, oh my God, he's based when he wants to go to war with everybody. I agree there's not a strong ideological commitment there, but I think that the ideological indifference is almost as frightening from me in the United States. And I think to the rest of the world, I think it is as well. Because from now for the next 30 years, the whole rest of the world, like as soon as there is a shiver in the timbers of the American economy, everybody's gonna be like, holy fuck, is America about to elect another fascist because they're having a minor recession? Like, that's what everybody around the planet is gonna be thinking for the next generation, you know?
Yeah. I think that for a lot of people, there is indifference, and there's a kind of nihilism that I find to be quite disturbing. That's become more prevalent in recent years, especially among young people. It makes me pretty fucking sad to see people that young feeling that nihilistic. But I think there's another. So there are some that are seeing what seeing what is happening, and maybe some even like the chaos. They're in kind of like their Joker phase of their life or something like that. But I think for most people in the camp that we're talking about, it's not indifference necessarily. It's actually ignorance. Like, maybe they can see the things that are happening, but they don't really fully understand like why it's bad or why it's wrong or the potential implications of those things. And I guess like when
hold on, just again to push on this, because it depends on just real quick, because like I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that there's a second order responsibility that's almost as important as the first order responsibility here. If somebody were to go up to you, and let's say you legitimately didn't know at all, but they were like, hey, just so you know, I don't know if your mom or dad are dead now, but like a year ago, your dad murdered 12 children. I don't think you would be indifferent to that. Like, well, I don't know anything about it. I don't know. I think that you would be highly motivated to do whatever you could to figure out the truth to that statement, because that would really bother you. I would imagine you would be very uncomfortable if you have a good relationship with your father to find out that he murdered 12 children, that he Anakin Skywalkered a whole bunch of young Jedi. That would be a thing that would bother you a lot. And I think if I asked you in the future, I was like, do you have an opinion about the fact that your dad like murdered like 12 children? And you're like, I don't know much about it. Or, I just haven't like looked into it. I don't know. I've heard people say it. Like, I would judge you harshly on that, even though you don't have a positive or negative position. That's what I'm saying. That second order thing, I think, is really, really, really important. And I don't think it excuses a lot of the American indifference to some of the historically horrendous actions, I think, that we're involved in right now. Like, the interference in Syria over the past 10 years is one thing, because that's insanely complicated or whatever. But like the bombing of Iran is a much more blatant thing that we should have some obligation to have feelings on. Otherwise, what? Can we just do anything and say the American public just doesn't know about it?
Well, I mean, it's overwhelmingly unpopular what he just did in Iran. I mean, the pollsters that didn't phrase the question in an insanely leading and loaded way. We know at this point it's like roughly a quarter of the country supports what he did versus like 50% who don't versus another quarter who are unsure. I mean, that's pretty unpopular.
Yeah, but this is the second time he's done it. Is this going to be a thing that it's harder because he's a lame duck now, and I think they've already kind of given up on the midterms if they can't rig it. So I don't know if we're going to see the electoral consequences there. But apparently there's not enough pressure from the American public for Congress to feel like they don't support him. You don't see Mike Johnson or the Republicans speaking out anywhere near as much as you'd expect them to, if it really is that unpopular of an action. I don't know. It's not enough in my mind.
I think you're demonstrating a rational reaction to seeing these sometimes horrific things that he's doing, where your brain immediately wants to go to like a problem solving kind of mode. And what you're going to try to do in those kinds of moments is try to figure out a path, like something to give you a sense of comfort, like this is going to end. But the truth is that nobody can tell you what's going to happen in the next 3 years. It was baked in that he was going to be president for 4 years when he won in November 2024. You can spend all your time thinking about what if he does this, what if he does that, what if he does this, what if the public doesn't respond, da, da, da. You can do that if you want to. I don't find that to be particularly productive. I think the best thing that we can do is the same thing that this country has always done and over again to get us on a better path when we find ourselves on a bad path, is you win elections and you do reforms and you try to win people's hearts and minds, like in the culture. A lot of that has to do with things that are outside of politics, like the role of the arts, how things are depicted in media. I mean, this is like insanely influential, and politicians have relatively like little control over, those kinds of things. And so, there are going to be things that maybe you can do in your own kind of personal life to contribute in your own little way to getting on a better path. But a lot of it is out of your power. And I think like, you don't have to be happy about that, but you should make peace with that at some point. And I think if we're talking about political engagement, the best thing that you can do right now is think about what is right in front of you. And so we just got past some midterms. Some primaries last night. I think the voters made a good decision in Texas. I'm pretty happy about that. And we got the midterms coming up. And if you're really looking for a way to, spend that energy, you would just spend your time elevating candidates that you think are strong and like helping the party win more elections. Because really, like, if it's not that, if the solution is not win more elections, implement more reforms, of course, if to the extent that there have been crimes that have been done by this administration and he's not shielded by immunity or a pardon, of course, like pursue justice in that respect within a certain within a certain boundary that you and I can like quibble about. But all of those things are valid. But right now we have midterms coming up in a few months, it's like 6 months or something, 7 months.
Yeah, I'm not saying
that's going to be an opportunity to send a gigantic shot across the bow, because do you know what's going to happen if we take back that House in November? We are going to, day one, we are going to harass this administration every fucking day of every week with subcommittee hearings. We're going to impeach members of the cabinet, and the Senate will ultimately acquit probably most of them or all of them. And we are going to make life like very difficult for that administration. They're going to have to spend time and energy and resources responding to these processes that the Democratic Party does. They did it the last time. It was really effective. It was probably one of the reasons why Biden won in 2020. And then, hopefully we're best positioned to win another trifecta in 2028. Like, that is the path. I don't know anything outside of that path is unclear to me. Like, what are you suggesting? If it's not win elections,
I think that path is good.
And adopt new policies. If it's not that, what is it?
I'm a big win elections and pass law kind of person, but I think that if we make it through this electoral season, even if we win the White House in 2028 and we've got the Senate and the House, it feels like, in terms of what you're saying, it feels like you think that that's like victory. But like, I feel like we're just...
It is definitionally victory. I mean, it's not complete.
I look at it as it's just
victory.
loss mitigation. The fact that Trump won a second term is like the fucking Harvey Dent turned into a crazy psychopathic murderer, and now we're just trying to like mitigate losses at that point. I don't see. But
Destiny, you're trying to concoct a solution that is just not possible. There's nothing that you can say right now to guarantee me that we're not going to be similarly challenged in 2032 to 2036. There's nothing you can come up with. There's nothing that you can come up with right now I mean exactly what I'm saying here. Like, there is no magical solution that I can tell you right now. And I understand why that impulse is there. I understand why that desire is there. You want to know that something like this is never, ever, ever going to happen again. But nobody can tell you that. Nobody can give you that comfort. You do. I
understand what you're saying, but like if this is what you're saying, this is the black pill. I would say this is way more black pilling than anything else, because I don't know if it's speaking for other people, but like, this is an America that I no longer have interest in that case. Like, if every single electoral cycle is an electoral cycle between and a two-party system, you have an authoritarian fascist regime on one end, and then you've got another regime that's desperately trying to both govern the country and win elections on the other end. That's just a system that I have no interest in defending. I think at that point the country's lost.
I'm certainly not saying that we're permanently stuck on this merry-go-round, but America has not been. This is not the first time that America has been challenged by an authoritarian movement from within, and we've overcome.
To what
some
level of success
challenges.
is like would this be like comparable to?
What level of success? What do you mean?
I guess, like, what level of success would you view like an authoritarian type figure in the United States as having that's comparable to the Trump admin in U.S. history?
Well, I don't know about like individual success, but in terms of like civil strife, the 60s and the 70s were more tumultuous. There was more upheaval then than there is even right now. We had a fucking civil war, followed by 100 years of like, challenging moments regarding like getting rid of Jim Crow. That was a really long, protracted battle. We've had open corruption in the United States government. That was just the norm. Bribing politicians wasn't even illegal.
Sure, but I think there's like, when I look at stuff related to Jim Crow, right? Like, this is like, in my mind, a worthwhile, noble fight. There's like a huge upheaval of centuries, arguably, of racism in the United States, and sometimes codified, sometimes not codified, like discrimination in certain areas in the United States. Like, I understand why there was the huge fight and the resistance from states related to Jim Crow. I don't know what that same impetus could be right now for people supporting Donald Trump. Like, I don't view like the Jim Crow stuff as being like fascist authoritarian stuff. If anything, not to make the fucking racist argument, but like the argument from the other side is that like, well, the federal government, in a historic move after the Civil Rights Act, is now coming into the states and telling them how they have to do segregation, and telling labor unions that they can't choose how to do their employment structure. Like, I think that was fundamentally different, and it was a worthwhile fight, and I think it was something real was being expressed that was worth fighting over in the United States. I don't know what the Trump movement represents besides just a disdain for democracy. Like,
no, but no, I mean,
I don't think it was like I'm just authoritarian type style leadership for when I look at like Jim Crow and challenges to Jim Crow.
I think you're mischaracterizing my view of like the short-term evaluation of where we're at. Like, me being optimistic about 2026 and 2028, that's not me saying like, oh, we're going to get through this, no problem. Like, it could be the case that this takes 20 years of back and forth, 30 years of back and forth before but that's
like, what you just said. That's impossible. There's going to be the appetite for anything.
What do you mean?
The appetite for any kind of back and forth is going to be 12 months after, and then after that, you're gone. Like, nobody's going to want to litigate stuff 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Is a lifetime in American political history, especially.
Well, you're talking about individual accountability for like potential criminal behavior from this administration. I'm talking about the like larger kind of problem of the dysfunction and hyperpolarization, and, you know, speaking more to your your evaluation of where the MAGA movement is at right now. Like, it may be the case that we are in a protracted back and forth battle with these forces for like decades. That is possible, and I think people need to prepare themselves for that possibility. But if the solution is not winning elections, doing reforms, incrementally getting better, progressing in the right direction, where these kinds of corrupt behaviors become less and less possible through these reforms, if that's not the solution, then what is?
I mean, I agree that's definitely part of the solution. I just don't know if
that's the solution, though. That's the solution within the, like, you know, apart from civil war, right? Like, that's how you would do it. That's how you would address this situation. Yes.
I guess what I'm curious is like, what are the reforms that you're thinking of that would rectify like the past 10 years of American political life?
What do you mean rectify? What does that mean?
Like kind of
address that in a way that makes it less possible in the future?
That right the ship, basically. Yeah. Right now, as it stands, there are going to be. Do you have kids? You don't, right? Do you?
No. Maybe I have 3 cats that I love very much.
Based. Like, there are going to be children that are going to be learning 10 years from now that January 6th was like a protest by Antifa, or they're going to be learning that there were serious concerns over the stability or the validity of the 2020 election, that was an election that maybe was, for the first time in all of U.S. history, a rigged election. Like, there are going to be people learning this. I don't know how that changes, and I don't know what the process is for getting people.
Nobody knows.
Okay.
Nobody knows. Nobody can make these promises that these problems are going to be fixed right away, and it might get worse before it gets better.
Well, but I also feel like another issue I have is that, like, these are not fights that I think are worth having to some extent, is like the justifying the existence of your system, that this should be a thing that we're not really fighting or arguing over, right? I don't know who. I don't know if this was Chomsky or what, but like, there are certain moral debates that we don't have in society, right? Like, nobody argues that you should be allowed to murder people or sexually abuse women, right? That's not like, we don't have to have those fights right now. Like, oh, like, is it okay that a man should own a woman's body? We just don't have that fight. And I think people would agree this is largely not a fight that we should be wasting time on constantly, because we're over that, right? We're fighting on other grounds now. But imagine if you had to, like, every single day debate, like, fundamentally moral things about the existence of your country, that we have to be fighting over whether or not a liberal style government is a good thing. Like, I just feel like that's like like, there are so many other issues that we have in society that if that's what we're fighting over, just justifying the existence of our style of government, that's like
it's a very dangerous, pivotal moment in this country. Nobody would deny that. But I want to kind of probe your perspective a little bit more here.
Sure.
Even in the current moment, like even everything being as it is exactly right now, do you think that America on balance has moved in a positive or negative direction in the last 50 years, 100 years,
on balance years? In 50, 100, 200, I would say definitely positive, yeah.
Yeah, well, that gives me optimism and hope. Mm-hmm. I mean, I take all your points. I mean, I have the same concerns. This directs me and my family directly, this administration, in ways that I won't get into, but it's like very stressful, and it's like a nightmare sometimes. I feel really horrible for people that are in my family that are directly impacted by this administration and have to like think about things that I don't. And I'm not ignoring any of that. All of that matters, and it needs to be addressed. I'm not saying like, oh, just sit back and just win the midterms. It's obviously not going to be that simple. But when I look at how far this country has come, I feel good about our chances. And I take a look at things like, I think social media is, and this is just beating a dead horse because this has been just talked about ad nauseum, but I think social media and the corporate media have given Americans like a false sense of like where things are at right now. Because when I look at the state of like the religious right, yes, they're entrenched in power right now after the 2024 elections. That is going to change in 2026, and I do feel optimistic about 2028. But apart from that, which matters, church attendance is down. Like explicit kind of racist, Nazi adjacent attitudes are down. Opposition to more immigrants coming into the country has just been it peaked right after 9/11 at 55% in 2002, and it's just been trending down ever since. So it doesn't feel that way because the American voters, they gave Republicans control of the Congress, and they gave Donald Trump the presidency again. But support for more immigration has been going up now for several years. Support for immigration levels staying at the same rate, which is to say, like, that's a pro-immigration position because you want immigrants coming into the country. That has been slowly going up. And support for less immigration is trending down. And so I look at the state of things, and I think what we're seeing right now is, I don't want to jinx it and say it's like the death rattles of this really ugly kind of lingering remnant of pre-civil rights era in the United States. I don't want to make that bold of a proclamation, but they are losing this fight. They know they're losing this fight, and that's why their movement is as unhinged as it is.
Sure, I don't disagree with you in the short term for now, but like you asked over the last 50 years, over the last 100 years, after the last 200 years, what do you think about over like the last like 20 years?
I'd say we were, well, that's a little different. Well, even then, yes. I like in so many ways, the country, I think, has moved in a really good direction. Like we went from like a really lackluster stimulus program during the Great Recession that did not go far enough. And lo and behold, the government seems to have learned their lesson, and they had a much better program this time around following the pandemic. And so I think our policies have gotten better. I think of like, there's a lot of anti-trans hysteria that's happened in this country right now, but there's no question that in the 21st century, attitudes out there in the culture and the zeitgeist about LGBTQ plus people and acceptance of these kinds of people in, society, just living publicly, authentically who they are, that is unquestionably moved in the right direction. And I think once we get past this moment, I think that we'll see movement move more in the direction of progress in that kind of way, while maybe like avoiding some of the trappings of like overly woke kind of language policing and that kind of thing. But yeah, there's no question, And when I look at like, there's all kinds of like metrics that I could look at. I mean, I take your point that right now with Trump in power, I mean, that's a hell of a backslide. But I'm not as hopeless as you are that the American voters will make better decisions in the future.
To be clear, I'm not hopeless. I'm trying to think of like what course corrects, because I agree that there are social issues that we have made progress on. I agree that
a lot of progress, Destiny, like a lot. You're old enough to remember just how like open homophobia was just completely normal in pop culture and movies and shows. And
in the past 20, 30 years, yeah, for sure. But I mean, like we backslid hard on like abortion stuff, right? Is it like 20 some states? I don't know how many states right now. You've got 6 weeks basically which is basically an abortion ban. You've got some states that are trying to extradite citizens from other states just for prescribing abortion medication. That was a pretty big backslide. You've got like these weird porn ban ID requirements now in a lot of conservative states that I think is kind of strange. When it comes to people attending church or not, I don't know. Like I want to agree with you. I would say that should be pretty self-evidently obvious that it's getting people away from religious fervor if they're not attending the church. I don't know 100% how true that might be, though. I think evangelicals are the largest, because I know that there are Catholics, my parents, unfortunately, part of this, who got turned off from Catholic church-related stuff because they felt like the popes were too woke, as stupid as that is, especially, I think, the last one. But I can't imagine that that's tracking like widespread lack of church attendance. When I look at like institutional damage, I also worry sometimes that there might be like a bit of inertia in terms of a backslide, but like once that inertia is overcome, you start to see huge damage really fast. So for instance, this president in the course of a couple months just got rid of like USAID and the Department of Education. That's not coming back in the next presidential administration. I don't think so.
I think it will. If it's a Democrat, I think it will.
You think they're going to reinstate the Department of Education?
Yes. And I think they'll restart USAID. Yeah, I do. I think they'll run on that too.
And oh, I seriously doubt it. Maybe DOE stuff, maybe, but running on US, unfortunately, I just don't think a lot of Americans care enough to make that like an electoral issue. But I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong on that. Maybe. I hope that you're like bragging to me about how stupid I was to assume that Americans don't give a fuck about other people, especially darker skinned people around the world. I hope I'm wrong on that. But I would be surprised really if USAID even comes up much other than like a quick yap talking point. I just think there's going to be so much other stuff politically that Democrats are going to want to do that sending political capital on that is going to be prohibitive.
I mean, if I use your own logic, then I don't think it's going to matter too much because this was like pennies on the dollar in terms of our investment. I think the next Democratic administration will bring it back because it was good policy that benefits America in numerous ways and sets.
Yeah, but I don't even know if the average American thinks that.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, I think like maybe I agree with you that maybe they shouldn't run on it because there's a lot of like isolationism going on in America right now. But I do think they will reinstate it because it is just like unquestionably good policy, like really good foreign policy that bears fruit in a lot of different ways. So
sure,
it's just.
I also think that another issue too is that like it's easier to tear it down than it is to reinstate it because it was what was USAID like? Was it a $50 billion annual budget?
I don't even know if it was 50 billion, but it might have been. Hold on, let me look.
So that's going to be an issue that when we go to fight about it, like I imagine that like the single most important thing, I think one of the most important things we can do just from a policy perspective, and this is already unpopular, I don't even think Democrats will do it, is we have to get rid of the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's got to go. All those tax cuts have to be rolled the fuck back because our current government is unsustainable, and that was just an unbelievably ridiculous, what is this, like $400 or $500 billion a year in terms of fucking revenue, just unbelievable revenue lost in the government. That's just unfathomable. But like that, what I just said right there, I think that would be like maybe an election losing issue for Democrats to run on tax hikes. I don't know if they can find a way to message that or not, especially because the people who generally want to talk about raising taxes are further left, and they're all obsessed with like wealth taxes and billionaire taxes, which are untenable for a number of reasons. But for the most importantly, even if you passed all these, the revenue raise is going to be an order of magnitude less than just rolling back the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So the idea that we would bring back USAID, that's going to be another $50 billion a year, there's no way we're going to do tax raises because people are just going to be ass pained about it. And then I don't know. I guess I have a really low.
Hey, listen,
yeah,
we'll get to the policy discussions when we get closer to the presidential election. We can have these kind of conversations right now in a just a masturbatory sense of just like whatever, just for our own pleasure, have these kinds of like theoretical conversations about this policy or that policy. But, the truth is like about a year from now, most of the candidates are going to start announcing. I do think the candidates are going to start announcing earlier now. And so I think, in about a year, then we can start having these debates about policy and just cross that bridge when you get there.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm only bringing that up. I'm only bringing that up because it's like, if like our conversations about that are going to be fierce. Okay. And it's going to be a real big deal back and forth on how we feel about things like the Department of Education and USAID. For the Republican administration, it was an executive order and it was gone. It was a nothing thing. There was no political cut. They just did it and it was done. And that's what I mean when I say like the inertia, like once they're in a position to start fucking with shit, they can fuck with it. But to bring any of it back is going to be such a struggle just to fight back to normal.
Did you watch the recent interview between Brian Tyler Cohen and Barack Obama?
I think I saw clips or parts of it, but
you should listen to it because they touch on this, and Obama touches on something that's been discussed a lot in these circles, which is that the things that the Democratic Party want to do just aspirationally requires so much more consensus in the Congress. They require so much more like electoral victories. It is like a lot harder to wind up I assume to wind up USAID again would take years to wind up that infrastructure. That would not be something that you could just, a month later, you're right back at it. You have to like put the staff in place, and you have to, get the contract signed with the various like manufacturers. And I mean, this is just a really, I assume, just a really intense process that will take a lot of time.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't think that's by
that.
accident. That's like structurally how our parties are set up right now, which is one of the issues I brought up, where it's like the Republicans, this is why I'm saying like it can't function in our two-party system where one side just wants to destroy fucking everything and has no respect for governance of the system at all, and the other side is both trying to win elections and like govern the country at the same time.
No, I agree with you. So like, again, it seems like the only difference here is just the substance of what we think are the proper remedies. But as far as like no-brainer reforms that I would like to see done as soon as possible is getting rid of the filibuster, getting rid of the Electoral College, adding term limits to judges, and including a binding code of ethics. And I'm sure I could bring in a policy wonk to, rattle off about 15 other policy proposals here. But, these are the remedies. Like, we do have a democratic means to handle this situation. Like the filibuster, I'm like 60-40 or 70-30 in favor of getting rid of the filibuster. I'm glad that we have a filibuster in place right now, for example, while the Trump administration has a trifecta. But there's just no question that it has to go. There's just no way that we can. It's just not tenable for the Democratic Party if we want to deliver an agenda that will, energize our base and deliver results for the American people. There's just no way that we could defend keeping the filibuster in place as the population disparities between the states gets worse and worse and worse to the point where, like the disproportional amount of representation that, smaller rural states have compared with the blue states. There's just no way that we can just ignore that. And so, but these are not like straightforward things. I'm not telling you it's going to be easy to pass these things. These things are going to take time to get done. And I want to prepare people for a prolonged fight. I don't want to get stuck in this. I think it's kind of a trap of like looking for this magical, perfect solution that can guarantee that things are just going to get better very, very quickly. Nobody can promise that. I don't think you should set people up to expect that that's going to happen. I think it's better to encourage people to prepare for a longer fight. Like, prepare to vote in every single election for the rest of your life. And there are lots of other ways that you can get involved politically, directly with the Democratic Party, or other ways more in your own community or whatever. But there's all kinds of efforts that you can make to contribute to the situation getting better. I don't know how useful it is to sit around and ask, what if he does this? What if he does that? What if he does this? What if he does that? I don't know. I don't understand the purpose of that. Why would I do that?
Well, I feel like that's a bad faith reframing. No, I don't think that's quite the conversation that we're having on our end. It's more just like, if you're having a business meeting, there's a guy that shows up screaming every single time. Like, our conversation is we're trying to scheme, like, how do we get like in-ear monitors for people? How do we get like loudspeakers so that we can like shout over this guy? What kind of megaphone brand do we need? Maybe we can show up early to, be there because he doesn't wake up early enough. Or maybe we can, like, it feels like we're trying to work around a thing and pretend that it doesn't exist with this false promise that like, as long as we can work around it enough, things will be better. But like, in my mind, like, if in 2032 or if in 2030 we're fighting with a similar Republican establishment than exists right now, we've already lost. I just don't view that as, it's just like,
what does that mean?
It's not a worthwhile.
I don't know what that means.
It's not a worthwhile fight. Like that. We're like.
What does that mean?
As in, we've lost ourselves as a country. We're no longer a functioning democracy.
But what is it? Hang on. What? I don't understand what any of this means. How is it not possible that, let's say Rubio, there's some scandal that brings Newsome down, and Rubio is sworn in 1932. Are you really telling me that that's it for the Republic? Like, how could you possibly confidently say something like that?
Well, I would say right now the Republic is already like not there. We're just like in a transitory period deciding if we're going to go back to being a republic or not. Right now, we essentially exist as a single like authoritarian state to some extent. There are parts where there are institutional powers in place, but like, if I were to hold a gun to your head right now and ask you, why are we at war with Iran? Would you be able to give me an answer? I can't.
I mean, I can tell you what they're saying, but
what are they saying? I don't even know what the fuck they're saying. First, nukes came after. Then I heard all ballistic missiles. Then I heard people mention Rubio about a Kurdish state. I don't know why the fuck we're at war with Iran, but I do know that we just killed like their entire fucking leadership in a pretty historically huge fucking move for.
You don't need to pitch me on this administration being awful.
No, I'm not saying they're awful. I'm saying that the United States is. I'm not saying they're awful. I'm saying that
like if you feel really bad about what's happening right now.
I don't feel bad. Wait. You're equivocating. You're equivocating. Stop. I don't feel bad, and I'm not saying that this administration is awful. I'm saying that the administration right now is authoritarian. That right now we have a White House, the single part of the executive branch that wants to rule and has been effectively ruling the entire government.
Well, this is why I wanted to ask. This is why I asked you the question. Like, where do you think we're at right now in the process towards, like, are we already a fascist state? Are we just, is it inevitable that we're going to slide into just like a complete dictatorship or fascism kind of situation? Like, that's why I wanted to ask you that question.
Yeah, I don't think it's inevitable, but I think that like we're on the path right now, and we would be more if not for the institutional stuff that's kind of like blocking the Trump regime as much as it can. But right now, the U.S. is effectively functioning really truly as like an authoritarian regime, right? You have let's say that you're a company and you want your company to perform well. Like one of the most important things you can do is go to the king and ask for reprieve from tariffs, or ask that he like approves your personal mergers, or ask that he sues your political opponents, or ask that he tariffs countries that you don't like. I
understand that, but I understand all that, and I'm certainly not suggesting that this administration doesn't have authoritarian behavior, actions, tendencies. However, at the end of the day, he can't just unilaterally pass legislation by himself. He needs Congress for that.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to.
Given up. Wait, hold on. Yeah, what do you mean he doesn't need to?
He doesn't need to.
I don't know what that means.
Well, as in order,
he would not have been able to do one big beautiful bill like everything that was in that package. He couldn't have just done that with executive authority, Destiny.
Sure,
he can't just unilaterally confirm judges. You can't do that.
Well, I mean,
we're still having elections. Like, why are we having elections last night? Like, are you saying that if he's setting up to cancel the midterms, why is he endorsing Cornyn in that race with Paxton if he's just going to cancel these midterms?
So why
would he even do that?
You're talking about a democratic institution that is still fighting to preserve itself. I'm not disagreeing with you there, but the fight is against an authoritarian leader, like which is how he's been ruling, for the government. You talked about the one big beautiful bill, but like levying taxes on Americans is an act of Congress. We have had tariffs right now for the entire period of this current administration. Right. The Supreme Court just struck down some, and he just found a different way to slap them on again. It's not impossible that we'll have tariffs for the entire.
But that's not the first time a president has done that. I mean, Biden did that with student loan debt.
No,
he didn't. He did not.
No,
what do you mean?
Hold on. Biden.
Hold on.
Biden
had
did
blanket student loan forgiveness.
He tried to initially, and the Supreme Court said no, and he didn't, and it didn't happen.
Right, but he still forgave 10% of student loan debt for 3 to 5 million people by using a different statute, using a different legal rationale.
For the percentage of the student loan debt that he forgave, he was citing to particular laws that gave the federal government the authority to do that in those ways. He wanted to forgive it for everybody, but he couldn't, and he got struck down, and that was it. You know this because I know you fought with progressives and other people who complained that Biden didn't do anything for student aid, and he gave up immediately, and he didn't. He tried, but when the Supreme Court said no, then he eventually stopped. You didn't see Biden get up and say, "I don't give a fuck what the Supreme Court says. I'm going to find a way to forgive everything, no matter what." And even more importantly,
his rhetoric is his rhetoric. But did he not issue an executive order within hours of that Supreme Court decision, complying with their decision? Did he not issue an executive order rescinding those tariffs to be in compliance with the ruling?
Did who rescind for what tariffs for?
Donald Trump.
He might have, but didn't he reinstate other ones using a different?
Using a different rationale, yeah,
but it was the same. It was the same tariffs, though. It's not like he changed directionally, like what he's doing.
Well, he didn't. My point is, he did not ignore the Supreme Court in the way that you seem to be positioning. Like he complied with their order, and now he's using a different rationale.
So so this is the big. I think this is a huge impasse that we're at for like arguments that I've had with people. Is in your mind, as long as the president ultimately gets declared as having done an illegal action, as long as he stops doing that action, then everything is working fine. In my mind, if you have a president,
I did not say that.
Well, you just said that no reasonable.
I didn't say everything is fine, Destiny. I said that we still have like a functioning republic.
I don't think that's functioning. It's not functioning when somebody breaks the law over and over again, and then when they tell them to stop breaking the law, you stop breaking the law, but there's no penalties. That would be a dysfunctional justice system, right? You agree with that at least, right?
I mean, listen, I'm not saying
I'm not saying for the president. I'm saying like if I'm
dysfunctional, I wouldn't fight you on that.
I'm saying if I'm beating somebody up and a cop says you're not allowed to beat somebody up, and then I stop,
I hate these analogies. These analogies have to stop.
Good. We're going to go with this one. I'm beating
I'm
somebody
begging
up. Cop comes by, says, you can't
Please
beat
don't do
somebody
this.
up, and then I stop beating them up, but there's no punishment for me. Would you say that's functional?
I mean, no, but like,
Exactly.
what are you proposing?
Well,
What are you
Donald
proposing?
Trump and everybody knew that these tariffs were illegal. That's obvious. It's plainly obvious. There is no fair reading of any law, of any statute, of anything that would give the president the ability to unilaterally tariff the entire world. Nobody thinks that. No reasonable. But as long as he does that, and he's robbed what $250 billion from the American public, who knows if we're ever going to get that back or not? Right? He's robbed that money from the public. Then the Supreme Court finally, a year later, said, "No, you can't do this." Like, oh, I'm doing it in a different way now. Right? Is this a functioning legal system?
Destiny, I take your point that the current administration and Donald Trump is absolutely deliberately
Lawless.
pushing the pushing the boundaries of like how much he could possibly get away with. There's no question that he's violating the law or violating the Constitution. Nobody's arguing against this.
Would you say that he's lawless?
However, the point that I'm in many respects, yeah, but not completely lawless. For example, he still has to go through Congress to get legislation passed. He still has to go through Congress to have his judges confirmed. If the Supreme Court hands down a decision, he has complied with those decisions. He's violating like various federal court orders, and that's a whole thing that's also like deeply troubling and alarming. But we do still have like a Congress and a judiciary, and we're having elections. We had elections last night in primaries. We're going to have elections in November. We are going to make it through those midterms. We are going to stomp them out. We are going to take that House majority back. And, he could pop off and try some shit, and we will cross that bridge when we get there. But what are you proposing that I'm missing? Like, what am I not willing to do that you think is appropriate to do right now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that part is the easy part, figuring out what to do. That's not a difficult part. The part is, I guess, coming to an agreement or realizing where we're at right now. And it seems like we have a huge disagreement on that. Like when you say like he's not completely lawless, like in my mind, that's basically like we shouldn't be the executive, especially. We used to throw around this term a lot that now people have completely abandoned, called constitutional crisis. And the reason why it was called a constitutional crisis is because if the executive decides to act lawlessly, you don't really have a way to check them on that, right? They can kind of just do whatever they want, which is what the Trump administration has basically been doing. Now, when the Supreme Court comes out and they give them a smack on the wrist, they've been allowed to operate illegally. Because remember, when the Supreme Court comes out and makes a ruling, what have they been saying? The Supreme Court is not passing new laws. The Supreme Court is coming out and saying, you have been acting lawlessly. And then the administration has gotten away with it, though, for the past however long prior to that. And then the administration
Isn't that the case with every president, though? Doesn't every president get faced with Supreme Court decisions that come down and the court essentially tells the president what you've been doing was violating the Constitution? I'm not sticking up for Trump. Listen,
sure,
I understand.
Yes,
I understand what you're saying.
But we can have a fact of the matter conversation on whether or not somebody is within the bounds of the law or is totally lawless. Like there have been times where the Supreme Court will check a president's behavior. I mean, it's like, okay, sure, he got checked there, but like maybe this could have gone either way, or there's a fair reading where for Biden, I don't remember the name of the Education Act, but the wording was ambiguous enough that it could have given broad deference to the president to do things related to financial aid. In times, I don't remember what the educational bill was cost, but like there's like a reasonable argument to be made there. There is no reasonable interpretation of the president of the United States can tariff the entire world. So if the Supreme Court checks both of these presidents, I wouldn't say, oh, well, look, both presidents, are acting the same way and they both got checked by the Supreme Court, especially when for the Biden thing, there was a stay on that. He didn't get to forgive all the student loan stuff and then the Supreme Court undid it. There was no stay on the tariffs. Those got enacted. The harm was being done, continues to be done to this day, and will probably never be undone.
The point of this part of the discussion, as I understand it, is to evaluate like where we are at currently. So if you were to take this moment right now and compare it to various countries throughout history that succumb to some kind of military coup and a dictator comes in and takes over and just tosses out the laws and maybe dissolves that Congress of Parliament at the time. And, Gaddafi in Libya when he took over, or, Lenin in Russia when he took over, or, Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany. Like, those moments when the state really collapsed and power consolidated to the very, very top in the form of a dictator, like how would you compare those moments to this moment right now?
I would say in some ways, the United States in some ways is closer because we have a two-party system and because Trump did not use like crazy political...
Wait, closer to what? What do you mean closer?
To collapsing into some kind of authoritarian state. Because Donald Trump...
Closer than who? What do you mean?
I don't know, than pre-Nazi Germany, because there was a lot of like political maneuvering, especially in these multi-party systems that some of these leaders, you say Hitler or whatever, had to do in order to get to a position in the parliament where he could, try to get passage of the fucking Enabling Act or try to get himself this position of Supreme Chair. Trump didn't have to do any of this. He got elected. Half the country supported him. So that fight, like usually the difficult fight for a coup or a dictator is to win the support of enough people or the military to do a thing. Donald Trump got the popular vote. He's already done that. And it's done.
And he's crumbling. And the Republican Party right now are crumbling.
He's not crumbling. He's soaring with a lifespan. You keep saying he's crumbling not. Because he's going to lose. But they got rid of the Department of Education. They got rid of.
That's the thing. He's baked USA, in for the next 3 years.
They got rid of Maduro. Years, yeah, I know. But I know. But then you can't say that he's crumbling. He gets to fly for 3 years and then he's grounded.
The Republic is still here. We are still going to have elections. I don't care what people say. He's not going to cancel the midterms. If he tries to do some shit, it's not going to work. We're going to have midterms and we're going to win. And I feel pretty good about 2028. Okay. And you just said a moment ago, at some point, like an hour ago in the conversation, you said, he's a lame duck. He's probably I don't know what kind of shenanigans he's going to pull in 2028, but he is not going to stay in the White House. That we will have a next president the next time. That's what I'm trying to get you to acknowledge. If you really don't think
hold
that,
on. I haven't not acknowledged that. I've agreed with you on that. I think that we're probably going to have elections.
What are we talking about here?
We're talking about what have we prepared ourselves for in 2030 or 2032. I think in 2020, I'm pretty sure that we're going to have another, if there's no significant course correction now or in the next 3 years, that we're going to have.
I'm asking for details. The
details are irrelevant. If you've made the decision to do it, you can pretextually. As in, if you've made the decision to do it, you can find a million different ways, like the current administration has, to enact whatever the fuck you want to enact. There's a billion different ways you can do it.
I already agreed with you that there needs to be course correction. But I don't know I don't know what we're disagreeing on.
The course correction has to be a thing that makes it feel like if you were to engage in this behavior in the future, and the behavior is a conceptual one, not a process and procedural one that we can just write a bill against, but if you engage in an attack against the Republic in the way that so many of these conservatives have, so many of these Republicans have, that there will be dire consequences. There won't be a political future for you, or maybe even criminal consequences, or whatever you...
I mean, I agree with you, so I still don't understand the disagree. What do we disagree on here? I agree with you on what you're saying. There should be consequences for these kinds of things. In an ideal republic with, a functional democracy and a healthy democracy and a, rational society, I agree with all this. Like, what are you suggesting?
Like, do you want when I say the suggestion is arbitrary, like what I mean is that like if you've all made the decision for that, there's a billion different paths forward you could take. We could say I've got 30 friends that are all Supreme Court justices, and we have enough in the Senate. We're just going to go ahead and throw 30 Supreme Court justices on there. We're going to reinterpret a law because I'm going to ask them in advance how they're going to vote. We're going to pass that law, reinterpret it in whatever way we need them
Congress.
to. And
you need Congress for that. So are they likely to give you 30 Supreme Court seats?
That's why I said if you have the Senate, if you've got the Senate for it, right?
Right, but if you don't have the Senate for that, well, what do you do, right?
If you don't have the Senate for that, you could. If you've made the decision, you can do whatever you want. You could have the President of the United States write. Just what I said. The President of the United States could write death threats to the people in the Senate that he doesn't like until they resign, until a Democrat steps in, or he could threaten to do it.
Are you suggesting that?
I'm saying he could. I'm saying you could do anything. That's not the difficult thing. Once you've made the decision, we have criminal immunity now for the President of the United States.
I don't understand why you're being so evasive about this. I'm asking you.
You're misunderstanding what the issue is. The problem is
not. I'm asking you for specifics, man.
The problem is not how do you do it. The problem is making the decision to do it. That's what we disagree on. Because if you've made the decision to do it, to find a way to hold the people right now accountable such that people in the future won't engage in the same behavior. And it can't just be writing a new bill. As there has to be repercussions right now for the people who are.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Ideally, yes, I agree. But what do you do? Gavin Newsom is sworn in 2029, and Donald Trump does a blanket pardon of himself as his entire cabinet, and the Supreme Court decides that presidents can pardon themselves. What are you suggesting at that point?
Get a re-ruling on the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and say President Trump's entire term was actually invalid. So we're going to roll back every single thing that he did there because he was an insurrectionist or he aided.
Courts are unlikely to go along with that, right?
Well, I don't know. Put on 4 more Supreme Court justices.
You need the Congress for that, right?
You just need the Senate.
Right. You would need a consensus in the Senate to do something like that. And what if they don't give that to you?
Get rid of the filibuster and put your 51 vote thing there. You said that you just need a majority.
Okay, you get rid of the filibuster. Even then, you don't have the kind of consensus to do what you're talking about. I'm asking you,
we're not going to have 50. Wait, are you saying we're not going to have 50 senators?
Say the thing. I'm asking you to just say, are you saying at that point, just temporarily pause the Constitution? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you can work. Where the thing that we're not connecting on is that like the Constitution and our entire legislative system is an agreement between parties to act in good faith. Do you agree with that, or do you not understand that? Because this is like a right or wrong thing. The Constitution and our statutes are not. We're not computers that are obligated to play by computer code. The law and the Constitution are agreements between all of us that we're going to do our best to act within the confines of in good faith. If a man decides he wants to act outside of these things, pretextually he can justify almost any action.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That's what the current administration has done. Why do you think mortgage fraud was the indictments that they were filing for all of Trump's political enemies?
I don't understand why your solution is better than the current course of winning elections and kicking them out of office.
I think that my solution would have to come. I don't know why you keep doing this false binary. Whatever I'm suggesting, you would have to do it after winning all the offices. Like these things have to run concurrently.
But do you think you would have a mandate from the public to do what you're talking about? Do you really think that they would get behind you?
No, I think you have to manufacture one. I think you have to make the argument to the public the same way that Gavin Newsom made the argument for why they should redistrict California. But at the current moment, I don't think the public would necessarily go along with it because they feel like both sides or they don't realize the current rot in the administration or what.
I am totally incredulous at the idea that Gavin Newsom could be elected president, do what you're doing, and then have the support of the public. I think that would lead to an electoral catastrophe for the Democrats. The public would not get behind that. That would bring his presidency down in flames. And then what happens? You get around to 2030, blown out in the midterms, 2032. We're back on that merry-go-round. And what did you get for that?
Like, I don't disagree that that's a possible outcome, but like in your mind...
No, come on. That is the likely outcome.
It might be, but in your mind, the worst thing that could possibly happen is losing the elections. But in my mind, the worst thing that happens is losing the democracy. Like, that's...
No. I never said that.
You're saying that he might do this, not get the mandate and lose the election or whatever. But I'm saying that like you can win the election and lose the republic. I don't want to live in a country where we have a new Democratic president and fucking abortion's not even on the table anymore. And we're fighting to bring back fucking USAID and the Department of Education and whatever else. We're going to have to fight tooth and nail over every single little thing. And I'm sure we're going to have a fucking Fetterman cockblock in the Senate for...
Who cares what you want? Why does that matter?
Because you're asking me. Because you're asking me. Wait. Because you're asking me what I want. What do you mean?
No, I want to live in a country where the Republican Party doesn't exist. But how is that relevant? What do you mean?
We have to have We have a two-party system. We have to have some political opposition.
As it currently is. I'm agreeing with you. As it currently is right now. I don't want to live in a country where like a full third of the population don't really believe in like a constitutional republic or America's version of democracy. I don't want to live in that country, but I do live in that country. And I also live in a country where about 40% of the people are registered independents. And a lot of these people are super disengaged. And a lot of these people don't really understand just how much worse the Republican Party has been. And they say things like, I want the partisan bickering to end. And it's all fucking ridiculous. I want those people to pay more attention to politics. And they don't. But how does that help to inform like my decision-making process? The things that you're suggesting that Gavin Newsom do, just come up with a pretext to just get whatever you want. It's not going to work out that way. You are going to lose you're going to lose so many people doing this, Destiny. This is not going to have public support.
Do you understand that the rationale that you're giving right now is arguably the same rationale that was powering Garland when he decided not to aggressively appoint a special prosecutor day one to go after Donald Trump? That this is a politically untenable thing, that it's going to make us look unpopular and biased. And like, I agree that it might have, but like, fuck, maybe some fights are worth having.
But him appointing a special counsel is perfectly acceptable, totally legal,
and it's perfectly acceptable and totally legal for Newsom to pursue the most aggressive punishment possible for the prior Republican regime. But this obsession with justice...
He is going to need the Congress to do a lot of that, and the Congress is probably not going to give him the things that you're proposing here, man. It's not going to happen.
Well, then fight for it. I think you can make the argument to the American people for it. I would hope so. But if you can't, like, my opinion just of the country as a whole just gets severely degraded. Like, that's just not a country that I guess I'm as interested in participating in. I don't know. And I feel like for people that have like strong feelings about like what a liberal democracy ought to look like, I feel like there's probably some similar feelings there. Like, is that really, like, my democratic country, my shining beacon on a hill, is a country that has to fight over whether or not the president should be allowed to be the most corrupt, insane person ever every single 4 years? Like, that's the fight that we have? That media can literally lie on behalf of the president and take direct order?
If you were born, Destiny, if you were born a black person like 80 years ago, living in the South, you were living in a country that said that you didn't have the right to fucking vote. Okay, so like this is not the first time that that American citizen has had their ideal version of America threatened in their minds. Like people have had to like fight these fights for fucking decades.
I understand.
And you're saying that if Marco Rubio wins in 2032, well, that's it, bro. It's all over. I mean, at that point, are you not justifying like just going full Minecraft at that point? And if you really think that that's the case, why don't we start doing Minecraft stuff like right now? If you really feel that resigned to this outcome.
Well, because I don't think that things are necessarily fucked yet. I mean, like there's still like a path back, but I mean, like it's not like black people were fighting to ultimately for a full like
century.
Yeah, to have like equal rights to white people. Like that was the goal, right?
It was 100 years, bro.
Yes,
100 years, man.
But I don't think that the fight to have a two-party system where one party is perpetually trapped in a fascist paradigm is acceptable, right? Like point to the like you want to bring up you want to bring up civil rights. I mean, what about like the Civil War, right? Like wasn't that a worthwhile
great example? Yeah. Yes, of course it was a great. Yes, of course. Yes, that was a worthwhile fight. I'm glad that we fought,
and we're glad that we fought. It was better to have that fight than to just say, "Well, fine, we'll just let half the states keep slaves," right?
Sure, but if the day comes where a hot civil war happens in America, I mean, I would really like to take every fucking step possible to avoid something like that. But if that day comes, then fucking we're off to the races. But we're not there yet, bro. We are not there.
I hope that we're not there, but like. I don't know what the line is for that because we've crossed over so many already. We're reigniting fears of a Cold War era United States and South America by unilaterally deposing leaders for who the fuck knows what reason.
What does this mean though? Should Newsome declare war on the red states?
I'm not saying. I feel like you think that the state of affairs is like Bush but a little bit worse. And I'm saying that like we have orthogonally left.
That is your
well, because you're acting incredulous. Where you're like
a little while ago.
No, but I'm saying
I am incredulous at the idea that you should just like have Gavin Newsom, pretextualize some kind of a crime, and then, are you familiar with something called the Green Lantern theory of politics?
No, what's that?
It's a bit of a meme in my chat, but it's this idea like lefties got mad at Biden because he couldn't get as much legislation done as fucking FDR. Because in their mind, they think that the president should just be able to snap their fingers and just whip the votes very easily. And just, it's just as simple as being charismatic or aggressive enough to get these things done. Mm-hmm. But that's not how this system works. That is not how this system works. You cannot have a situation where Gavin Newsom is inaugurated in 2029 and have a reasonable expectation that he's going to be able to deliver the agenda that you're talking about. He is going to have to work within the confines of the system. He will be constrained by the Congress. He will be constrained by the courts.
Sure, but the opposition is not.
Well, they are, again, they are like definitely testing their boundaries, and they are definitely stepping over.
Why do you say testing their boundaries? What Vance? One of the questions that Vance was asked. One of the questions that Vance was asked for his election. This was on the debate even with Walls. Is like if Donald Trump was to try to coup us again, like in J6, what would you do? And Vance says, I'd support him. Are we going to call this testing the boundaries?
Again, you don't need to sell me on this administration being uniquely bad in this moment in history.
I'm saying that's not testing the boundaries.
Let me finish. This moment right now is one of the most uniquely dangerous moments in our country's history. I fully grant you that. I fully agree with that. What we do, the remedy to get back on a better path, is what this discussion is all about. And the proposals that you've given me so far are entirely fantastical. You are not operating in reality. There is no reality where Newsom does the things that you're suggesting that he does and maintains enough popular support to, continue effectively in his role. And if you're saying that he should, I don't know, declare war on the red states, I still don't even know what you're suggesting here. It's just, it's all very vague in general to me. And I think that it's not very helpful.
When you say what I'm saying is vague, what is my response to that? Do you remember my responses to this?
No.
My response is that this is a second order question. What we do it's like having an argument. We're having an argument over corporal punishment for a kid.
Details
Hold on, wait,
matter.
no, they don't. We're having an argument. We're having an argument over corporal punishment for a child, and you're saying, well, what would you use to hit the child? But that's not the argument. The argument is whether or not corporal punishment for a child is okay. That's the argument. You can say, well, what would you hit him with? What would you hit him with? That's not the argument. The argument is whether or not.
Can I request a ban on analogies just for the purpose of
okay,
this?
well, I'm using them because you seem to not be understanding my point. My point is that what we do, if you really want, we could sit down and plan out 10 different courses of action if that's like really what you wanted to do. But that's not important. The thing is figuring out what we're going to do. It could be, here's one. It could be every single congressional committee that's put together, every single one is dedicated to endlessly subpoenaing and getting the records up and doing testimonies of every. No. You said like of a crime or bullshit. Fuck crimes. Every single person that ever made
conversation, Destiny. That's literally what I said. I said we are going to take back that gavel and we are going to start subpoenaing, sending them subpoenas. Week 1, we're going to harass them every fucking day. Do you remember me saying that? That was my solution.
Sure.
My solution still exists in the confines of the Constitution. You're going somewhere else with it, and you're refusing to commit to any details.
But that, hold on. No, wait, hold on.
If you get into the details.
No. Okay. What you're saying right now is not within the confines of the Constitution. You just don't understand or recognize that because you think as long as something is legal, it's okay. But what you're talking about is an abuse of Congress. Do you recognize that? It's an abuse of.
No, it absolutely
is. Pretextually subpoenaing every single person that supports Trump, that's an abuse of Congress.
The Congress has broad authority to conduct investigations into whatever they want to do.
No,
they
you
can
sound
do
like
that
Trump.
within the
You
system.
should act like
It is not a violation of the Constitution for the Democratic Party to take control of the Congress and start investigating every single cabinet member. They can do that. It's fully constitutional. It's not ideal for a functional democracy, but it's not violating any norm or any kind of constitutional amendment. They can do that. They have the authority to do that.
Okay, I understand.
You just gave my suggestion.
Your perspective.
That's what I want to do.
I understand.
That's not a perspective, bro. That is not a perspective.
You're dead wrong. The idea that as long as it's not explicitly.
What law are they breaking by doing this? What constitutional amendment are they breaking by doing this?
I don't know which one it was. I'd have to go look for it. But I would want, and for our system to work, congressional committees need to be acting in good faith, and it can't be an endless subpoenaing of political opponents. That's a bad.
Sure it can. What do you mean?
Okay, then maybe we just have a disagreement. Well, in that case, then we actually don't have any disagreements at all. I guess you would just find a ton of things like this. And for Hutch, as long as it's not breaking a law, it's okay. But you have a much closer position to Trump than I do. You must realize that, because for a lot of these guys, their arguments are all pretextual as well. Because what you just said there, in my mind, that's not a functioning Congress. You're breaking the system at that point. But you're saying as long as it's not against the letter of the law.
Do you agree that this is the most uniquely corrupt administration maybe ever in the history of the country?
Sure.
What do you think part of Congress's job is, Destiny? Their job is oversight. If this is really the worst, most corrupt administration ever, they should be doing hearings every fucking day.
Okay, wait, hold on.
That's not violating any norm or any law.
So are you saying that their congressional oversight hearings or whatever should just be where they think that somebody has committed some kind of fraudulent act?
No, you go wherever the information takes you. So if there's already like 50
then
stories
you're not suggesting anything.
happened in the last year.
You're not suggesting anything. You're just saying Congress should do its job when they come in and investigate people for doing their job.
Yes, I think that Congress should do their job.
Sure.
Yes,
that's not that wasn't my suggestion. I said that Congress,
I still don't even know your suggestion.
I already said it, but you claimed it was yours. I said every single Republican should have every single fucking thing tied to them should be subpoenaed. Every fucking thing every car loan, when they bought condoms as a 19-year-old, if they cheated on a high school fucking test, every single thing. No, hold on, wait. That's not your position, though. Your position is Congress should just investigate crimes that they think there are crimes there. That's just Congress coming in and doing their job. That's business as usual.
Would you agree, Destiny? I'm just curious.
Sure.
Would you agree that there's theoretically a level that you might consider to be too far that would result in the public losing confidence in what you're doing by virtue of the fact that you would be perceived as overreaching?
Yeah,
Do you
for sure.
agree?
My position right now is probably over the public's acceptance. That's why I said you would have to make the case.
Then why the fuck would you suggest that?
Because you have to make the case to the American public that this is a fight worth having. It's worth trying to change the American public's opinion on it. I think that the reason
you can make that case. Yeah. You can make that case, but if they say no, we don't like that course of action, then what do you do?
then you would give up the fight.
This is democracy. This is democracy, okay?
Democracy is not just when you have elections.
Hold on. Hang on. I agree. I never said that. I'm talking about democracy in action at the federal level, okay? You are going to have to deal with a Congress, and maybe some of your own senators are going to say no to some of the things that you suggest. You are going to deal with a public that is going to express their approval or disapproval in the form of special election participations, off-cycle elections, midterms. You have to consider all of that, okay? And I think in your mind, you've jumped to this conclusion where it's even theoretically possible to do the things that you're talking about. And I don't understand why you would arrive at that. I think you're projecting your anger and your rage at this administration on the broader electorate, and this is a misguided thing to do. Most of the public do not operate the way that we do. They're not thinking about politics the way that we're thinking about. They're not consuming the news at the rate that we are every single day. And if you do the things that you're suggesting, they will turn on you very fast. They have already turned on this administration very fast. They think this administration is doing overreach. They think this administration is corrupt. And the Republican Party is currently paying a very steep price for that. Why would I want to replicate that, Destiny?
I feel like we're retreading a bunch of the same ground. Because there are just things that you're saying that I just disagree with. I don't think that the administration is paying a steep price. I think that this has been a Republican wet dream. Like, if Republicans lose the House and the Senate, and they lose the presidential election next year, at that, the Republicans would still write this term off as a massive victory.
I don't agree.
Okay, I 1,000,000,000,000% agree. They've gotten so much stuff.
Why have over 36 Republicans resigned in Congress? Like, why do you think that's happening?
Some of them were at the end of their political careers. Some of them genuinely might have thought that it was going too far. But I mean,
Destiny, you know why?
Why?
They are fleeing a sinking ship. That is what they are doing. They are getting slaughtered. I don't know what you mean when you say they're not paying a price. Do you agree that, like, losing seats is a political price? That's actually a pretty serious political price.
It can be a price, but do you think that...
Yes.
Hold on. Do you think that Trump can do permanent damage to our system? Or at least, like damage that would require a significant amount of stuff to repair, like getting rid of USA or getting rid of the Department of Education?
Yes.
Okay, so if the Republicans have gotten a lot of that type of stuff over the past 4 years, do you think some of that might be worth losing an election over? For them, like, they might say, like, oh, fuck it, maybe fuck it, maybe this is worth, we lost this election, but we got stuff that like getting rid of the abortion thing. That's worth, well, at least a few dozen retirements. No, isn't that crazy?
We can't do anything about that. That was decided in 2016.
You just pivoted. That was a hard pivot. I'm asking you. Do you think it might be worth losing some
larger point?
Well, no. This is part of my larger point. If you literally could play God and you were Republicans, listen, you can get You can get rid of 20 seats in the House, but you get to get rid of the Supreme Court's protection on abortion. Would you take that deal?
We have a perfect example of this.
You just said You just said no more metaphors and analogies. I'm asking you specifically on that point, and then you go to answer this, and then you can go to your point. Just answer this, and then you can go to the next thing. I'm just asking you, if you could push a button to nuke 20 Republican seats, but get rid of the Supreme Court's ruling on abortion, do you think most Republicans say, yeah, fuck it, let's go?
Ask that question one more time.
If a Republican could push a button and get rid of 20 seats in the House, they lose 20 seats, but they know they can unwind the Supreme Court's protections for abortion. Do you think most Republican lawmakers would take that deal? Like, oh, fuck it. We lose 20 seats, but we get... You don't think... No. Okay. All right, I think we have fundamental disagreements on... I
don't think these politicians... I mean, you do permanent tax cuts. I think that's a better carrot to dangle in front of them. I don't think these politicians are most of them are principally attached to pro-life stuff. I think they cynically play into the religious right. But I think a better example of this is something that actually happened with the Democratic Party. You had a situation where several, dozen Democrats, and it wasn't even just in the Congress. I mean, it was a bloodbath all over the country at the state level, at the local level, lost their seats because they passed the ACA. And they knew they were going to lose those seats by voting for the ACA. And they did it anyways. That is an example of what I would say is a worthy sacrifice. You accept some short-term losses. And it took 7 years, I think, for the ACA to become popular with the public. Popular enough where it was impossible for the Republicans to get rid of it during their first term. But right now, like when you look at what Trump has done, maybe some Republicans feel good about like his escalation in Iran, or
Wait,
like,
hold on. Can you walk me through? I don't understand how that supported your point. That seems like a thing that supports my point. It's worth losing seats
No, I'm agreeing that sometimes it is appropriate and good in the long run to accept this temporary sacrifice. But
Okay.
as far as this administration goes, this term right now, this is just. I mean, like you would have a stronger case, I think, during the first term than this term, because you got the Supreme Court justice. What's the legacy of the Trump second term going to be in terms of like Republicans 20 years from now are going to look back on this term and be like, well, we got fucking absolutely obliterated in the midterms and we got blown out in 2028, but we got the one big beautiful bill ending the Department of Education. Like, what are we talking about?
So ending the Department of Education, I think, is a pretty huge W for them. I think they all hate the concept of the Department of Education. So I think that's a big W.
That can be reversed, though. You don't even need Congress to reverse that.
I would be surprised if the DOE came back in the next administration, but we'll see. But I would be surprised. So that's
I think it will.
That's one thing. So that in USAID, I think they feel good about that. I think that how long is it, 5 or 10 years that this ICE funding was negotiated for?
I don't know.
That's the thing that they're going to feel pretty happy about.
But none of hang on, Destiny. None of these are like codified, permanent, lasting things like the Fair Housing Act or Social Security, Medicare, the ACA. These are all like temporary
where
things.
Are we at for where are we at for the cuts that we made for Medicaid, for the One Big Beautiful Bill stuff? And then we've got the ACA. The ACA subsidies are cut. Yeah.
They had to do that through budget reconciliation. Okay, this is not the same thing as like the ACA. There's a expiration date on everything he's done so far. Okay, everything he's done can be undone.
But when that expiration date comes up, those are going to be fights that we have to have again, because they're not going to.
I understand that. We cross that bridge when we get there. Of course, yes.
But it's we're losing. But now we have to fight to go back to the status, because they're going to say, oh, well, look, they want to raise your whatever rates. They want to do this, right? They're going to say that, and now we're going to have to be willing to what? Give or sacrifice on these points of the future just to fight back to normalcy? These are victories in the Trump administration. Here's what I'm saying. If we manage to roll back ICE funding in the future, because it was not like a permanent thing or whatever, but that when the renewal for that or whatever comes up, they're going to say, oh, the Democrats want to cut ICE funding by $30 billion to make America less safe. We better pray we don't have any terror attacks between now and then, because that makes Americans feel a certain type of way about it, right? But if now when they go to do that, we're going to have to give something that we would want otherwise, and then we're going to be celebrating like, oh, look, we managed to roll back the ICE funding, so that was good. No, that's a holdover victory from the Trump admin that we had to give on a future agenda just to be able to roll back, even though you just said to yourself that like, well, it'll go back automatically. It doesn't go back automatically. These new things always turn into fights. That's definitionally how it works.
Destiny, who the fuck told you that this was going to be easy?
Who the fuck told you that these, like, empty, like, this isn't going to be easy? I'm never.
You're like, what if they do this? And what if they do? They're going to do this? Like, what am I supposed to say to that? Yes.
When I
say get bad again. Yes.
When I say
to vote and continue to stay engaged. Yes. That is what it means to like participate in a fucking democracy. When I
say, what if they do this? What I'm trying to do is illustrate to you that your point of these things don't last forever, you're presenting that as a victory, but that's not a victory. That's a future fight. And the fact that you're having the fight means you've already lost, because you're not going to get it for free.
I mean, you can make sure that you don't have to have these fights in the future by just resorting to, authoritarian measures and just tossing out like the principles, the bedrock principles. You can do that if you want to do that.
Well, right now we have to have the fight in the future because the current administration resorted to authoritarianism.
I don't know of too many examples in history where this happened and it led to like really good outcomes. It's usually really fucking horrible outcomes. But yeah, you can do that if you want to do that. I would like to avoid the kind of backsliding that I think your methods would just
Wait, I don't understand what you're talking about. Fascist regimes were replaced with wars. The Revolutionary War we fought against the monarchy was a war. The Civil War to bring the South back under rulership of the United States was a war. What do you mean?
All right. Well, if you're proposing a civil war, like,
I'm not proposing a civil war. I'm just saying that your statement of you don't typically, win in this way by, whatever you just said is not true. You typically it is done by war. Unfortunately, that sucks, but that is typically like how it works in the past.
I think sucks is underselling it. I mean, I think it would be catastrophic. A modern American civil war. Can you imagine?
I agree, but do you know what would even be worse than a civil war is living under a permanent authoritarian regime. But you don't even consider that as a possibility. That's not a possibility in your mind. Because you always present you always present that. Because when you present the Civil War, you always present that as the worst possible outcome. It's not. The worst outcome is just an authoritarian regime that we're forced to live under for the rest of our lives.
Tell me one thing that I've said in this entire conversation that has hinted even remotely that I think that it's off the table that America backslides completely into a fascist state. When have I ever said anything to suggest this?
Representing that now for the next 10 elections that on the ballot is going to be democracy or fascism, and then just alluding to, well, this is just going to be a rough fight. No one said it was going to be easy, Destiny, LOL. That shouldn't be on the ballot, really ever, but especially not for all of our future elections. We have to govern. There's other shit we have to do in the country.
I don't care about should or shouldn't. I don't think about things because I live in the world as it is, Destiny.
Yeah,
I don't waste my time saying it shouldn't be this way.
You literally do. We're political pundits. We talk about what things should be like all the time. That's the whole goal of politics.
No, but not in the way that you're suggesting. Nobody can make you these promises. You claim to have this thing that you think is going to be this permanent long-term fix. And when I press you on the details, you get cagey about it. And you say, well, the details don't matter. It's of course they matter. What do you mean they don't matter?
What do I say? Wait. What do I say when I
actually going to do these things? That is these are really important questions. It's like asking Bernie Sanders how he's going to pay for fucking Medicare for all. It is a relevant question to ask you. How do you actually do these things as President Newsome? And you're like, well, just figure it out when you get there. You can come up with any reason. No, I don't know what that means. You still need Congress. You still need the courts. You still need voters.
Man, the filibuster. Oh man. If you wanted to have your filibustering, because you're repeating, I know the answer. I can't respond to your question because you're filibustering. Why? I answered directly so fast. What do you mean? I can't complain about it. Listen, when it comes to single-payer healthcare, if you wanted to do Medicare for all, right? Funding it is a separate question. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay. You're asking me when you say, how do you want to do this thing? You're asking me about funding it. Okay, but I'm not having a conversation about funding it. I'm saying, should we have it? That's the question that I'm asking, and you're pretending that the funding it is the hang-up part.
But before I can explore your possible solution, I need to know that it's workable. That's why people ask Bernie, hey, how are you going to pay for Medicare for all? Because it's an important question. Because if you tell me, I don't know, we'll figure it out when we get there, I'm going to think to myself, well, I don't really have a lot of confidence in that plan. That doesn't seem very fleshed out. But if you can give me a clear path to Newsome, disenfranchising permanently every currently sitting Republican politician in the country, then maybe you can show me a workable plan. So far, you haven't, is my point.
Okay, what if my plan was, I will find 30 Supreme Court justices that I personally know that agree with me, make sure I've got 51 in the Senate, kill the filibuster, and approve these guys, and then just have them reinterpret some law to let me do what I want. That's a legal path. What's your problem with that path?
Because that legal path still requires the consent of the governed, the consent of the Congress, and then you need the courts to rule that is something that you can do.
I keep saying that you have 51 senators. You can do this, so the Senate will be there.
If you have 51 senators and you want to pack the court with 30 judges, yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Yes.
So then that would be my idea.
Okay. I've never expressed a principled opposition to packing the courts. I do think that you should probably focus on term limits and a binding code of ethics before you talk about packing the courts. But I've never said that I would be opposed to that.
Okay, then what is our principal disagreement? Or are we in 100% alignment on everything? Because I don't think you agree with the point that I just brought up. I think you would say we shouldn't pack the courts with the express purpose of holding the last regime accountable.
No, who the fuck said this? Who the fuck said that I don't want to see this administration held accountable? Who actually said this?
Poll our chats. You can poll your chat too. That if I were to ask the question,
I understand.
Wait, if I were to ask the
your
question,
subreddit has been strawmanning the living shit out of me, bro.
But if I were to say I want to use creative ways to hold the past administration accountable, including a massive court packing spree with the express intent to reinterpret some law to hold them accountable, you think that most of even the people that listen to you would say, oh yeah, I think that Hutch would be okay with that.
I would be okay with it in the sense that I wouldn't call that the end of the republic, but I would recommend about 10 other things before you even got to that point. I've never, ever, ever said that I think we should avoid holding this administration accountable for the health of the republic. It's utter nonsense.
No, you just equivocated. I know you haven't said that, but you want to do it in the strictly norms abiding, whatever abiding ways that the Republicans have been ignoring for the entirety of everything they're doing.
I mean, again, if this administration, on his way out, he just blanket pardons himself and everybody in the cabinet, Like, what do you do? Like, what
you get a
mean,
reinterpretation on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, say Trump was never a real president in the first place.
No, hang on.
What?
I'm not asking for like a pie in the sky, fantastical, theoretical.
That's why is it pie in the sky?
Because you're not going to have the support to do that,
You get the Supreme Court to do it. You get the Supreme Court to do it.
What does that mean?
As in, you find 30 judges that say in advance, yeah, I'll rule that way. And then you put them on the Supreme Court and you get them to rule with it.
You are not going to have the support from Congress that you would need to do that.
You only need the Senate. You need 51 of the Senate.
How else can I say this? You would not have the support of enough senators to do what you're suggesting. They're not going to vote for this. I promise you. It's not going to happen.
If you're okay,
it's not going to happen, Destiny. Okay. I want you to acknowledge this. Acknowledge this.
I agree. Right now, the support's not there for it.
Happen.
But can you acknowledge that you're fighting in a different ground now? The first ground you gave me was you need to present some possible path or whatever, some way that you would do a thing. Then I'll evaluate it. Yeah. Now that I've given that, now you're saying, well, is this politically feasible? Which I've already said. Right now, the appetite is not there in the American public. I don't disagree with that.
Destiny, we did not even make it past the first test there. You just said, I asked you, like, give me things that are possible.
That's possible. Procedurally, it is possible. That's what possible means. Procedurally, you could do it.
No. When I say possible, I mean, like, actually doable. That's what I'm saying.
What do you mean by actually doable? You could actually do this. You mean, would you have the support, like the popular support to do this? That's what you're asking.
Are you being fucking pedantic with me? I'm saying, like, realistically, can you expect to actually, like, maybe get that done?
Okay, so you're asking me for a thing that would be politically popular. That's what you're asking.
I am asking you, Destiny, for like things that you can actually get the Congress to sign off on. Like,
when you say actually get them to sign on, you mean they would have the
realistically. I mean realistically.
Why would you just say it's are politically popular? Are politically popular? Why can't you say that?
Listen to me. This is like when I argue with lefties and they say, well, why didn't he do Medicare for all? And I say, well, he had a 50-seat majority. He couldn't lose any votes, and Manchin and Sinema said no to this, and this. And then they do the shit where they're like, well, he should have just whipped the votes. That's what this conversation is right now.
It's not, because we're fighting over, but we don't, I guess we just don't agree it's that dire. The fight over things like Medicare for all, these are...
Say that. What do you mean it's not that dire? Because
I'm explaining it right now. That the fight over Medicare for all, this is a fight that you can have inside of a functioning democracy. That's fine. Like, similar minds can have, or intelligent minds can differ on what that position is. We cannot be having the fight continuously in our democracy about whether or not we should be an authoritarian regime. That's not a legitimate fight to have. That's like a failed state.
That doesn't answer your question to like, how do you whip the votes to add 30 seats?
Do you acknowledge that these are two different fights? They're different in kind, a different type of fight.
Yes, but your fight has no form or no substance. You're just talking about very general, vague things.
I'm asking you to get into
details.
I'm just saying, because you just said that this is like when lefties complain about not getting Medicare for all. What I'm saying is that a defeat on Medicare for all or victory on Medicare for all does not inform me on whether or not our democracy is functional. A defeat on whether or not we should have an authoritarian ruler does. These are different kinds of fights. One is worth fighting much more aggressively and vigorously than the other one.
Okay, so 2032 comes around. Newsome didn't deliver an impressive legislative agenda. He wasn't very popular. Marco Rubio is elected. In your mind, I guess we're a failed state. Like, what does that actually mean then? Like, what are we talking about?
I don't know. At that point, we're in the mass protest, mass riot, attempted coup stage, or whatever, or trying to get the military to do something. I don't know. At that point, where it depends on how we want to deal with our new single party rule. I don't know.
I mean, listen, I agree with you. I think we should take things one step at a time. And right now, the thing that's right in front of us is just stomping them out in the midterms.
Stop. I'm going to keep cutting off when you do this. I'm going to cut you off when you do this. Yes, because you're trying to assume.
You just told me not to filibuster, and
because
you
keep retreating.
Interrupt me every time I start making my points. Everything that you're saying right now, Disney, none of this is workable, okay?
You keep retreating to this point of we have to win the elections. I have never, ever disagreed with that. Every single part of my plan requires us to win the elections. Do you acknowledge that? No. I need to hear you say yes, Destiny. Every single part of your plan requires you to win the elections. Yes?
Not in the framework of your argument, because the things that you're suggesting...
Then you're not understanding what I'm saying.
No, you don't understand. The things that you're suggesting are not going to be popular with the public. They will get crushed in elections. the Democrats will get fucking crushed in elections.
Then you lose at that point. But you can't enact on any of my plans at that point if you lose the elections. The most important thing is winning the elections. You literally can't do anything that I want to do if you don't.
That's why I think when you win elections, you should focus on doing reforms that you can actually get fucking done. Destiny.
That's fine, but there at some point.
Talk about term limits. Talk about getting rid of the filibuster. Talk about any other number of things. Stop jumping straight to this.
Can you just
30 Supreme Court justices and everything's going to be fine and pretextualize a crime?
Mm-hmm. Can you just acknowledge how absolutely fucking retarded you sound when you say we need to focus on term limits when the current president of the United States has openly said he would run for a third term and no other politician says that he shouldn't do that on the Republican side? I need to hear you say that. I need to hear you say no. I need to hear you say this. I need to hear you. I need to hear you. I just from my own mind. No, Hutch, from my own mind. I need you to say. Hold on. Wait, no. I just want to hear you say this one thing. I need and then you say whatever you want after. But I need you to say. I need you to say, Destiny. We need to focus on term limits when we have a current administration that doesn't even believe in the current constitutionally mandated term limits.
What are we waiting for? Destiny, what are we waiting for? Let's get this party started. He's going to steal the election, right? What are we waiting for?
I don't think he is going to steal the election. I don't think they've got...
What the fuck are you talking about? We're going to have the election, bro.
We are, but right now, you're saying that one of the big things that we need to do is do new legislation on term limits. The current president doesn't even believe in his own term limits.
Okay, then again, let's get this party started then, right?
No, because you have to exhaust your pathway to that thing first. I think you should make the argument to the American public that we're backsliding into fascism. We need to take severe, drastic actions. I don't know why you're the one saying we need to go right to civil war.
You're arguing. No, you're the one saying that.
I'm not. I haven't. You're saying that.
Your argument is very flexible right now, okay? Because I tell you, here are some reforms that I think would help to make future Trump more difficult to pull off by some corrupt actor in the future.
What are one of those reforms?
I just told you. You would do Supreme Court. You would do Supreme Court term limits. You would do getting rid of the Electoral College. I would honestly reform the structure of the Senate, but I don't think that he's going to have the support in Congress to do something like that.
I don't know how.
There's all kinds of reforms that you can enact.
So you're just going to filibuster still? You're just going to pack that?
You interrupt me every fucking time I speak.
Because I'm going to, whatever you say right now, I'm going to go back to the two things you just said and ignore everything you're saying right now. Because your reforms don't help. They don't help much. Okay.
You don't think it would help to have term limits for the Supreme Court?
Right now, for this president? No. Also, the Electoral College wouldn't help because he won the popular vote. They won't help.
What does it matter right now? We're not going to have a trifecta
because they wouldn't prevent a future Trump if the current Trump won the popular vote. How would Electoral College reform help? He won the popular vote. That doesn't do anything.
What are we supposed to do right now? We're the minority party, Destiny. What are you talking about?
No, you're saying, hold on. What
reforms would you do? Why don't you answer that?
I just got whiplash from how hard you just pivoted that argument. Okay, I am not saying right now that the Democrats have a whole bunch of legislative options available. You are the one that said these are the things that I would implement to prevent a future Trump, and then you said Electoral College reform when he won the popular vote. That doesn't make any sense to me. Can you explain that?
In the future, are you saying that you think it's likely that the Republican Party are going to continue to win the popular vote?
Yes.
Despite the fact that this is an anomaly.
Yes.
They've won the popular vote. You think it's it's likely that they're going to win the popular vote in 2028?
No.
Do you want to bet money on this?
For 2028, no. But past that, they could. Yeah, it's not outside the realm of possibility. If they could win it with this guy now, why couldn't they win it in the future?
You're making a carve out for 2028, but then in the future you're saying, oh yeah, no, they're going to win the popular vote easily.
I've already agreed with you that they're electorally fucked for 2028. That's why we spent 10 minutes arguing whether or not you could sacrifice an election for other policy gains in the interim that you think are worth sacrificing the election for. And then you even gave the example of the ACA, where it was maybe it was worth sacrificing part of the next election in order to get this thing passed. Do you even disagree that getting rid of the Electoral College would be a good reform? I think it should probably be an okay reform. Yeah, I don't have super strong feelings.
Why are you fighting me on it then?
Because
what the fuck are you doing?
I also think that eating healthy, I'm going to use an analogy, is a good way to live a better life, but it's not going to cure your cancer. You're telling me that Electoral College reform is a way to prevent a future Trump. I don't think that it necessarily prevents a future Trump.
Okay, let's use that analogy, right? Okay, it's not going to prevent you from getting cancer. In this analogy with you having cancer, your solution that you're talking about with all these, add 30 fucking Supreme Court justices is the equivalent of me saying, okay, well, I'm just going to not have cancer.
What? No,
just propose something that can't fucking happen.
It's a radical intervention. You're the one saying that if we just keep eating healthy in 10 years, the cancer will go away.
I didn't say that. I'm telling you the opposite, bro. I'm telling you to fucking buckle in, that this could possibly be
Stop using
like
these meaningless words. Buckle in. I know it's a long fight. Why do you think you're the only one that acknowledges that it's a long fight?
So what but you're also telling me in 1932, if Rubio wins, then we're going to be effectively a failed state, and it might be time to pop the fuck off.
I'm saying
that's not you telling me that you're in for a prolonged fight. That's you telling me that Marco Rubio necessarily means that we're in like an existential crisis.
I think we're already in the existential crisis. I think that Rubio winning in 2032 is a continuation of that.
Sure, that might be the case, Destiny. That's my point. I'm telling you the truth. You don't like me because I'm being honest with you. It is just true.
Okay, what if
there is no magical solution, and the things that you're proposing are entirely fantastical? They're not going to happen.
Okay, here's a question. Let's say that we follow your roadmap, okay? And then let's say that in 2032, the next president of the United States is Eric Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that, is it back to the same old, we just got to keep voting and hope that we sweep him in the midterms? If he says, I'm going to govern exactly like my dad did, except even more aggressively because I'm not functionally retarded.
It depends. Depends on what he does, right? Like, we've seen many countries throughout the history of the world go through prolonged periods where their republic or their system of government, their culture, their national identity get challenged in really significant ways. Sometimes that stretches out for fucking decades. South African apartheid. I mean, like, there's been nothing but ongoing volatility and instability in fucking Israel for the last 80 years.
If South Africa brought back apartheid and the black people, they were like, fuck this, we're going to coup the government, would you tell them, no, don't? Like, you got to be ready to fight for a long time.
No, not necessarily, obviously. But like, there's, if I send you a link, will you watch a video?
After this talk, sure. Or do you want me to watch it right now, or what is it like a?
No, not now. I do have to go soon.
Sure.
It's a conversation between John Lovett from Pod Save America in it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I know. I understand. He's kind of cringe. He's kind of cringe right now. But and an academic named Erica Chenoweth, and she studied over the last 100 years. She studied every popular kind of civil rights movement that exists in any country, like all over the world. And what she discovered was that nonviolent protests, even in the face of brutal, authoritarian, violent governments, nonviolent protests was twice as likely to succeed as violent protests. And so, for me, I'm sure you are aware.
I'm very much aware of this.
No. But I'm saying, for me, I'm sure you are aware at this point that I'm all about like a harm reduction kind of life as a trolley problem kind of calculation. Like, that is how I work. And so, whatever question you ask me about some hypothetical situation that could manifest in 2032, and you say, well, what do you think should be done? My answer is always going to be like, it really depends. We can cross that bridge when we get there. I don't know if the conditions more broadly in the country will have changed that will, allow for a different kind of method to do. Like, nobody can predict that far into the future. Nobody can tell you what's going to happen in 2028, let alone 2032. And we could go back and forth and try to come up with some scenario to like basically guarantee that we're never confronted with these kinds of threats in the future. But I'm saying in order to get to that point, you do have to like really compromise some bedrock liberal principles.
I'm not saying have a dogmatic. Wait. What are the bedrock principles? So let's use the civil rights movement as an example. What are bedrock liberal principles that they had to compromise?
The civil rights movement?
Yeah, what are like bedrock liberal principles that these people were compromising?
They were practicing the movements that were successful at changing policy and getting rid of Jim Crow and successfully lobbying the federal government to pass legislation to codify these reforms. That spanned the course of decades.
What were bedrock liberal principles that they had to compromise on?
I never said that they did. They were doing largely nonviolent protests.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood you because I thought you said that you need to be prepared to compromise on bedrock liberal principles.
No, but I'm saying that's what you're suggesting. I'm saying that you're jumping to, okay, yes, we do need to essentially like pause what should be the national identity of this country, like our liberal framework, those bedrock principles of individual liberties and constitutional rights and co-equal branches of government and all these mechanisms to prevent the concentration of power. You seem to be suggesting that we go in the direction of like, well, maybe we do need to concentrate power for a little bit to deal with the immediate threat. And
sure, to save liberalism, right?
to preserve our system, yes, and then to eventually strengthen it. That has been the ongoing process of America over the last 250 years. That's what's happened. We've just little by little, incrementally, usually like very slowly, we've had more and more and more safeguards put in place, and now we have this new challenge. Every fucking generation has something that challenges them existentially. We are not special in this regard, okay? And
I think I can't think of a single example where a president has acted with such blatant lawlessness where it's just gone completely and utterly unchecked.
The Andrew Jackson who succeeded Lincoln, he was pretty bad.
What was the huge thing? I don't know enough for I really can't say. But
I'm gonna be honest, neither do I.
Well, fuck you.
You caught me on that one. But I'm told that he's very bad. But no. But like beyond the presidency though, like for decades in this country, bribery was fucking fully legal. There was no law against it. It happened out in the open. Government, the norm of American government at the state level, at the federal level.
I understand what you're saying.
Openly corrupt.
I understand what you're saying. No, stop. Please, let me just. I understand what you're saying. You're saying openly corrupt. If bribery was legal, this might sound silly now, but if bribery was legal, that's not openly corrupt. That was just the part of the game back then. But like, it makes sense that you would pass a law to stop the bribery if bribery was currently legal. That makes sense, right? That's not the politicians being corrupt. That's just like what the expectation of the game was, and people were playing within the rules of the game. The current administration is lawless. They're not doing bad things that are technically legal. When they're getting stopped by the Supreme Court over and over and over again, that means that what the Supreme Court is saying is you were acting illegally the entire time. But they're cool with it.
But I understand all that, but respectfully, Stephen, I don't think the remedy that you're proposing here accomplishes what you think it accomplishes. Because, okay, let's say, we preordain what the outcome is going to be. It's going to be the Trump administration in prison, and every current Republican barred from ever holding office ever again. Okay, what with that? What's to stop a resurgence of MAGA 20 years from now on someone even worse than Trump? In the absence of any kind of reforms, then you just
I can tell you. You're not going to let me talk because I have an answer to this. I think that
what are you doing?
Because you keep just saying random things that aren't relevant to your question. You had a good question.
Random things. Don't get mad at me for cutting you off. You cut me off.
It wasn't about cutting me off. It was just speaking. Okay. I think that it's a good question. What would prevent the resurgence in the future? What I'm saying is that my plan would be more likely to prevent that because people in the media would be scared. And the lawmakers would be scared because they know that if they were to engage in the kind of unmitigated fuckery that has been the last 10 years of conservative politics, there might be a big repercussion waiting for them at the end. Whereas that resurgence of MAGA, I think, is far more likely to happen in your world, where they see us as a bunch of suckers and like, oh, look at them trying to pass laws and block us in the future. Didn't they know we didn't give a fuck about the laws in the first place? LOL. And they're just going to do the same shit again. As long as it's not like currently like super to the letter breaking the law, they'll just keep doing the same shit over and over again. And that is a dysfunctional political system that's broken.
What you're saying is contrary to like American history. Like what you're saying is like you're incredulous at the idea that the conditions can improve through reforms, but that's what the American project has been about. Life has gotten better on average for people because of these incremental reforms that have taken over time. The overall amount of like a really explicit, overt kind of corruption has reduced in this country. In spite of the fact that right now in this moment, we're dealing with Donald Trump, who is just like uniquely corrupt. That doesn't negate the fact that we have made progress in the right direction through these reforms.
I understand what you're saying, but you're missing the lawless aspect. Like when you say that we have improved in this country, I obviously don't deny that. But you are improving incrementally in certain directions. I hope that you're not like going back and forth on the structure of government you have, on whether or not you're like a liberal democracy with 3 co-equal branches of government. That's not a thing generally that we're going back and forth on. We're going back and forth right now on a different kind of thing that is different in kind than legislative agreements or disagreements.
I agree. I think what you're getting at in a general sense, if you were just put it into one word, is just hyperpolarization.
No.
And
it's not hyperpolarization because polarization applies to poles. The current administration is off in another direction that's not just left versus right. We're not fighting.
What do you think hyperpolar means? What do you think that means? Do you think it means
very
just
far
left versus right?
Yes. Yeah. I think generally speaking.
No, that's not what it means. That it means two groups of people that are becoming more and more entrenched in their positions, and less people in the middle that are in and more open to compromise. It's not about like strict left-right paradigm.
Okay, but I'm not being pedantic. I think it's actually instructive on what your feelings are, because when you're saying hyperpolar, that we need to meet in the middle, I don't want to meet in the middle with authoritarians. That's not a thing that I even want to have a meeting on. It's not a polar position that needs to be reconciled in the middle. It should never exist as a position in U.S. politics.
I am not asking you to compromise with people as they chip away at the things that safeguard the country against, tyranny or monarchy or concentration of power. I'm not asking you to sacrifice and compromise in that kind of way with these people. That's not what I mean. I mean, I'm simply pointing out that like anytime countries devolve into a state where hyperpolarization becomes this extreme as it is right now, it does lead to really bad outcomes. Generally speaking, a lot of the times it does lead to complete destabilization. Some other country comes in and invades them, capitalizes on that destabilization. There's some kind of a civil war, some kind of a collapse of like societal and governmental order. Like we should seek to avoid these things as best as we can. And when I say compromise, I'm not asking you to hold hands with people that, like want to end American democracy altogether. But you do have to find a way to work within the system. Otherwise, you risk just like hastening this mass destabilization. And I just don't think that people should treat that flippantly.
I agree, but I'm worried that with the framework that you are presenting, that there's going to be a slow acquiescence to an authoritarian regime, and then by the time we're all the way in that direction, it's like we're way, way, way too far gone at that point.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I am worried about that too. I can't tell you with 100% confidence that we're going to be okay. I'm not saying that.
What is the line for you where you're like, and I'm not asking you to stake out like a hyper specific, like 20 members of Congress say or do this, but like, what is like a general line for you where you're like, this is it?
The line in a general sense would be, again, just like another trolley problem evaluation. So I would have to
let's
come
say
to
the
the
SAVE Act
conclusion,
passes. Is that a line?
to like declare civil war and just like completely
or
just fuck off
whatever is right before civil. If you make it about
Not
civil
the
war, then
SAVE
you're
Act,
always
no,
right. You always
no.
win. You're always right. We should never declare civil war ever, right? Like Abe Lincoln would have never declared civil
Why
war,
would
and
you say that?
because you're saying I don't know why you keep going to like civil war, when the first thing
You
that
didn't
I'm
even
saying.
want me to answer the question. You did the thing where you just like I was giving you the answer to your question. Like the answer to your question is I would have to come to the calculation that some kind of a civil war or significant risk of civil war would be the less harmful option. It would be the better option in the face of, as in the context of this discussion, it would be like some kind of like a fascist takeover of the entire country.
But that a civil war is never going to be. That's not ever going to be the case, though, right? That calculation will never be true. It wasn't for the U.S.'s point of view, right? Civil war in the short, maybe even short medium term, was probably significantly more harm.
No, but we're talking about long-term viability, though. I feel like you're being pedantic again. I'm saying like the ultimate outcome.
How am I? You're saying that you're going to do a harm calculation, a harm reduction calculation at every single individual step, and you're doing this in the immediate short term. And what I'm telling you is, I don't think there's ever going to be a short-term harm reduction thing that is favoring some sort of like more drastic action. It doesn't have to be fucking civil war. It could be like the 30 Supreme Court justices that I said earlier. But if you're always doing a short-term evaluation, while Republicans are playing a more long-term game, if you're always doing a short-term evaluation, you're never going to say that enough is enough. Like, I think the SAVE Act, I'm sure you agree that the SAVE Act is fucking horrible, right?
I don't even know the particulars of the SAVE Act.
It's basically I don't know where it's at in terms of its support for Congress.
You need like a passport to vote or something like that?
So it gives the federal government way more reach into how states run their elections than it should ever do. And it's obviously like you agree that the Trump administration is doing whatever the fuck they can to involve themselves in the midterms, right?
Yeah, I mean, they can try, but like at this point, I mean, tell me if you agree or disagree. Like, let's say Donald Trump announces 2 months before the election, I'm going to send fucking ICE to fucking Philadelphia and Atlanta to monitor polling stations. Like, what do you think is going to happen there?
I think he would be able to do it. I think there'd be protests, but I think the protests in and of themselves would discourage some people from voting. Possibly, it could also backfire. Maybe.
I think it would juice engagement up by like 10 or 20%. And the reason why I feel that way is I look at Minnesota. And I look at the way that this country right now is reacting to Trump's corruption and overreach. They're getting more engaged. The turnout right now for these primaries and these off-cycle elections and these special elections is juiced through the fucking roof for the Democratic Party right now. I don't know how familiar you are with the overperformance margins, but you'd have to go back to like the precursor to the Tea Party movement in fucking 2010 to see these kind of numbers. On average, Democrats are overperforming. Real quick, on average, this is important. On average, the Democratic Party. What do you mean it's not important?
It's not because we overperformed under Biden and we lost after Biden was in for 4 years. Biden got more votes than any president in the entirety of the U.S. history.
Then your point feels so incoherent to me, because I am talking about winning elections so we can implement reforms that would make it more difficult for the Republicans to consolidate power in the way that they have, to eliminate these institutional advantages that they have right now, which are undeniable. The Senate and the Electoral College just undeniably benefit the Republican Party in the current form. And I'm talking about winning elections and building enough consensus to pass reforms to address these problems. And you're saying, that's naive. What do you do if Marco Rubio wins in 2032? And it's like, well, you cross that fucking bridge when you get there.
It's funny that your example is literally the only moderate person on Trump's entire fucking cabinet. That your go-to is fucking Marco Rubio.
Pick whoever you want. I don't
Trump
care.
Trump Jr.,
Vance.
fucking Lutnick, fucking Vance, fucking Stephen Miller. Any of these people would be fucking...
Pick them. It's fine. Pick them.
But
yes.
It just... Okay, I won't nitpick them to death. Or I'm not just generally. I'm just curious, like, what are a few of these reforms that you think actually help us avoid like future Trumps?
Why are you asking the question of, like, you just conceded a moment ago that the getting rid of the Electoral College would hurt Republicans and help Democrats, right?
I don't think I conceded that at all. I said quite the contrary. I said Trump won the less popular vote. I don't know if that helps us in future elections.
I want you to listen to what you're saying,
yes,
and evaluate the last like 40 years. And you look at the amount of times that the Republicans have won the popular vote compared to the Democrats, and then tell me with a straight face that you think that getting rid of the Electoral College wouldn't help Democrats. Why are you fighting me on this?
If I look at the last 40 years, I would say absolutely not. It doesn't help us, because you have to look at the trend. Like over the last, I'm curious, do you believe over the last 25, 30 years, do you think that the Republicans are becoming more norm breaking and violating, or less? Or do you think it's a yo-yo back and forth? Because I would argue from Gore v. Bush onwards, maybe even before that, it's been a steady stream of more and more overreach from Republican regimes, more overreach from people like McConnell in the Congress, more overreach from a conservative Supreme Court, more and more overreach. It's trending in one direction. I don't see this yo-yoing back and forth. Do you disagree with that?
You're talking about now something entirely different. You asked me about the reforms that I would do to try to help Democrats essentially win more elections. And for some reason, you're fighting me on the Electoral College, even though the track record is just so obvious and clear that, like Donald Trump won the popular vote in the last election, but that was an anomaly. You know that was an anomaly. And if we maintain the Electoral College...
You're talking about a direction, right? If I were to another analogy, if I were to take the average height of a person from 5 years old to 15 years old and predict how tall they're going to be at 16 based on how tall they were at 7.5 or 10 years old, that would be stupid. The Republican Party is trending in a more authoritarian direction, in a more misinformation-heavy direction. They're trending in that direction. Why would I take the average of the last 30 years to say, well, an Electoral College abolition would actually be good for us? I would just look at the trend.
Why are you deflecting to like who's violating more norms?
Because I would say that the violation of those norms. I'm explaining why. I know what we're doing. We're exploring whether or not it would be good or bad for us. What I'm telling you is the reason why I think it would be bad for us, or wouldn't necessarily be good, is because the violation of those norms is helping them win more elections.
What does that mean? Like in the context of the Electoral College, what does that mean?
As in, the Republicans are able to convince more of the population to vote for themselves because they're willing to engage in sometimes illegal behavior, like, for instance, cooperating with the largest cable media network in the United States of America to spread misinformation to the public. That would be an example of a huge norm / maybe illegal, I don't know, kind of violation thing. Or how about, like, violations of the Hatch Act? Maybe there are American public people that look at Trump putting his face on everything, or look at the Trump account. Do you think there are going to be people in 2028 or 2032 who are like, I don't know how I feel about the next Republican, but this Trump account for my kid has, like, fucking $20,000 in it. The Trump account is kind of cool, I don't know. These are all like norm violating things that Republicans are more eager to engage in that also help them look better publicly to their base as well.
But you seem to be making the case that these norm violations would be enough to, to be honest with you, I truly don't even understand.
Well, here's the question. Do you think that Trump winning the popular vote this time...
I think you're fighting me on this because I think you're afraid that that undermines your point, Destiny. The idea that the Electoral College, getting rid of that and switching to a popular vote, there is broad consensus that the Electoral College, on balance, in the modern era, disproportionately favors Republicans. I don't know why you're fighting me on this.
I don't disagree on that. In terms of that's been the notion. I don't know if that will be the notion going forward. Why do you think Trump won the wait. Why do you think Trump won the popular vote this time? Do you think that was just a crazy, unpredictable, bizarre aberration?
Not necessarily. I mean, why do you think? I mean, I think when a country experiences 2 years of inflation the way that they did, the incumbent parties are typically punished when the economy takes a shit. This is not rocket science. It happened all over the world. Basically, every incumbent party got punished right there. Did Donald Trump win because people were, yearning for fascism, or did Donald Trump win because people felt like their paychecks were going further?
Not just won the popular vote. So are you saying then? So if we get rid of the Electoral College and there's inflation again for 2 more years, then that doesn't. So you're saying that doesn't even help us? Or are you saying that
if you're just going to construct new future problems, we can just cut to the chase. And
I'm not constructing new future problems. You're just taking it for granted that Republicans will never win the popular vote again. And this was a bizarre aberration.
I am trying to center the conversation about what is right in front of us right now. What are the best options at our disposal right now? And you keep deflecting to what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And there's nothing I can tell you to say, I don't have a perfect fix to make sure that the system is just perfect moving forward. That's not what America is. That's not what American democracy is. It is a constant process of staying consistently engaged and not expecting there to be some theoretical utopia that we could reach in 4 or 8 or 12 or 16 years.
Okay, you keep hand waving my position as the utopia. Your position is the utopia that you think there are 3 reforms that we can pass.
I'm telling you,
because you're telling me that you want to pass laws to constrain a lawless president that is openly laughing and flouting the lawlessness of his administration in front of everybody's face. That we had the president double tapping Venezuelans and they're laughing about it. They're saying there is no fucking world order. There is no fucking world law that can hold me accountable.
So is it your position? Are you really going to tell me right here that the various reforms that were adopted in the post-Nixon era, those didn't do any good?
I think they might have helped a bit, but what helped more was the entire United States saw that Nixon was the bad guy.
He was pardoned, Destiny. He did not go to jail.
He was pardoned because they thought that he was going to go to fucking jail. They thought that Nixon, he was under investigation, and they thought if he didn't pardon him, they were going to fucking arrest him and put him in fucking prison, which would have done a whole bunch of fucking crazy shit to the American mind to have a former president in jail. Hold on, Donald Trump wasn't pardoned. He got criminal immunity from the Supreme Court. Do you see the difference there?
You are missing.
I'm going to ask you a question. Do you at least see the difference there?
You are missing my point.
Do you see the difference there?
Entirely right now. Ask me the question again, and then I want to get back on my track here.
When Nixon was pardoned, do you see a difference between him being pardoned and Donald Trump getting criminal immunity and not acknowledging a single wrongdoing?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know why the Nixon example is relevant here, but okay, go ahead.
I'm asking you, you're poo-pooing the idea of incremental reforms, which is just, that's how we progressed as a country for fucking centuries. Okay. What do you mean, no? You're saying, you want to do these cute little reforms, but how do you
is fine. Incremental reforms to fight a growing fascist movement in the United States that currently has the popular vote approval, whether it's because I know they're not all voting for him, I like fascism, blah, 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 but that are indifferent to it, you're losing something it's really fundamentally fucked at that point, and you can't just reform your way out of it without also holding the last administration accountable so that nobody thinks they can act this way again.
Who said I don't want to hold the administration accountable, Destiny?
You do, but I don't think that changing the structure of the Electoral College is doing that.
You just conceded. Did you not? Did you just concede that the Electoral College being eliminated would probably help Democrats?
I don't think I have. I don't know why you keep thinking I've conceded that. I don't know if it would. I would be neutral on that right now.
I don't think you actually think that, man. There's no way you actually think that. There's no way.
When right now you have a crypto, your cryptocurrency finance bros. If you would ask me 5 or 10 years ago, is Silicon Valley going to be a bunch of Trump dick sucks? I would vote. I would have been more confident telling you 5 years ago that Silicon Valley will never support Donald Trump than I would be right now saying that abolishing the Electoral College is going to help Democrats for sure. That was an unfathomable bridging of horrible. Bringing 2 horrible realities together to create whatever clusterfuck we're in right now. that I was going to see Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan saying, oh, actually, yeah, Biden bullied us all the time. Oh, there's no proof of any of it, but oh, yeah. I would have never, ever thought that. That I would see 7 of the wealthiest men in the world who all donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural fucking campaign, all sitting together politely on camera, or that the wealthiest man in the world was going to buy a social media company to literally partisanly campaign for Trump. All of these things, in my mind, would have been less likely. All of those things are less likely than, well, if we abolish the Supreme Court, it's obvious that it's going to help us in the future. I don't know if that's the case or not with the current media environment we live in. And I don't think that your reforms are going to change the current media environment. Like, here's the question. What would...
Well, I mean, you would have to do different reforms. We're talking about reforms about the structure of government, but to your point about this crazy asymmetry in media between conservatives and liberals, that's a different problem. And I'm not saying that we should avoid any kind of policy changes or legislation or constitutional amendments or whatever to address what's happening, because I agree that it is a problem. I don't know how to fix that problem in accordance with the First Amendment that wouldn't get tossed out of court. But I agree that it's not tenable in the long run to have the situation is as it currently is. If that comes in the form of regulatory penalties or if it comes in the form of legislation or whatever, I agree that that's a problem. That's playing into my strategy of like, I eventually want to win enough elections so that we can actually wield power and then use that power to make changes to the system, to make the situation better in the long run.
Which is always good, I think. I agree that that's always good. My only question is that in 2032, this is my only question, in 2032, what could we have changed such that it would discourage a similar type of administration from running again on the Republican ticket?
You can't prevent that from happening.
I'm not saying prevent it, I'm saying less likely. Okay, if that's your position, that like that's going to be equally likely then as it is now, because there's nothing realistic we can do. For me, and listen, everybody's got their own thing, but that's like not an America that I'm like interested in engaging with anymore. That's an arc raiders full time, because at that point you're fighting you're not fighting this is how we build a better liberal democracy battle. You're fighting for your life. Every single election to not backslide into an authoritarian regime. That's not the United States of America that won World War I and II, that I grew up learning about and abolished slavery and civil rights and all that. That's a crazy different country at that point that I just think is not even worth saving at that point. I'd rather go to fucking China with a son.
I mean, you're a wealthy guy. I mean, you'll have options, like if we get to 2032 and you arrive at the conclusion that America is just a matter of time, it's inevitably going to become a failed state, you can take all kinds of measures to remove yourself from the situation.
To be clear,
permanently.
I don't think it's inevitable, right? But I think that you put us on that path. And I feel like there are other paths. I don't think that it's inevitable.
By winning elections and doing reforms?
By winning elections and thinking that winning elections and doing some reforms is enough against a party that operates with a flagrant disregard for reforms or law. Yes. Because it sells to the other parties like, okay, well, they beat us this time, but we know what we can get away with now, boys. Time to roll up to 2032 with some whole new crazy fucking plans. And we know they're not going to do fuck all except maybe win the next election and try to reform their way against us.
But you get flustered and frustrated and dismissive when I press you on the particulars of what you're talking about, and I dare to question the viability. You tell me that your solution is doing stuff like adding Supreme Court justices, 30 Supreme Court justices or whatever, and I say, okay, great. What does that actually look like? I mean, when you look at the current makeup of the Senate, and
I literally told you. I already told you all of these things. You just don't like my answer. I told you if you have 51 people in the Senate, get rid of... Okay, yeah, because you don't like my answer. Everything is nonsense, though. This is the difference between Republicans and Democrats. You said your answer is nonsense, right? Imagine if I would have asked the question before for Donald Trump, what if I can send ICE to states and literally start deporting people based on their skin color? Maybe it's even U.S. citizens. That's not possible either. That was all illegal. That was all illegal, and he did it.
Do you agree that it's a lot easier for a president to send ICE into Minnesota than it is to add 30 Supreme Court justices?
Maybe for a Democrat. For a Republican, no. If the Republicans thought that court packing would benefit them right now, they would do it. It's not a mystery why they don't want a court pack. It's a 6-3 court.
You think that
you're telling me, wait, just to be clear. You're telling me that the party.
Are you going to let me jump in?
No.
You're telling me, I
just want to be clear. You're telling me that the party.
You think that Donald Trump could easily add 30 Supreme Court justices right now? You think he could do that?
No, because they've got a 6-3 court. They don't need to.
Okay. Yes. What does that even mean?
What do you mean? What does it mean?
Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Wait, they have a 6-3 court. They don't need to pack it. It's already packed for them.
I asked you.
It's a meaningless question. They're winning right now. It's like saying, do you think that first place would cheat and add more points to their score? No, they're in first place. Why would they? No.
Destiny. I asked you, is it easier for a president to send ICE to Minnesota or to add 30 Supreme Court justices? Because you deflected to ICE. Well, he can do the ICE thing. Well, which one is easier, Destiny?
Probably adding 1 or 2 Supreme Court justices first, Hutch. if you want to say packing. But if you want to talk about what's possible,
Why are you doing this?
Hold on.
Why are you doing this?
Because you're talking about a Republican administration that already blocked a Supreme Court pick for us for a longer time span than any other time in all of U.S. history, about like 6 months. The longest block.
I get it.
We lost a Supreme Court pick, and which is essentially a type of packing. And now that they have a 6-3 court, and Republicans go, oh, we would never pack the court. You're going, well, that is true, Destiny, right? They're not packing the court, right? The guys with the 6-3 fucking conservative court with Alito and Thomas as the permanent one brain cell fuck buddies on that court. No shit, they're not packing it. Why would they? They already have a 6-3 court.
You are preaching to the choir. Like, you think that I'm happy about what happened with the court? If the next time there's a democratically controlled Senate and a Republican president and a Supreme Court justice dies, I would fully expect and want the Democratic Party in that spot to hold that seat open for fucking 4 years if need be.
Sure,
I'm totally on board with that. Right?
Okay, can I wait?
But that's a different thing altogether. You're saying you don't like my solutions.
Can I ask you this question? Do you think that right now?
Don't cut me off again. Hang on. You just did a whole thing there. Okay, like you're saying that I just don't like your suggestions. That's not my issue. My issue is your suggestions are literally impossible. And I don't understand the value of exploring those. You're saying, well, conceptually or theoretically, it's possible.
Okay, just on the Supreme Court thing. Just a question on the Supreme Court
thing. Why are you cutting me off
because
again,
you're rambling
bro?
on a bunch of stuff that we're not talking about. I just want to ask on the Supreme
rambling.
Court thing.
If you can't follow what I'm saying, you need to up the Vyvanse, okay? Because I am speaking very clearly.
But you're speaking past the point that we just made, and I'm going to go back to this. So everything you're saying is worthless. So why waste the time? On the Supreme Court thing, if right now it was a 4-5 conservative liberal court and Trump came in day one, do you think that Republicans would be principally opposed to expanding the court by 2 seats if Trump thought that it would significantly help him legislatively?
They wouldn't have the votes to do that, is what you're missing, man.
Wait. So you think that when you say that, you think that Republicans in the Senate would oppose Trump on that? And you're confident of that 100% or 90%?
Give me, flesh out your hypothetical, okay? Are we talking about the current Congress?
Donald Trump says right now we have a broken Supreme Court. It's 4-5 disgusting liberals. When I come in,
he would not have the votes to do that.
You don't. So you're confident that Republicans would never try to add 2 Supreme Court justices?
In the next, what are we talking about? In the next 3 years? No, they would not have the. They would not have the votes to do that.
Asking. Let me ask one more time.
Would they try to do that?
It's 2024. It's 2024. Wow, you're avoiding this so hard. 2024. It's a 4-5. Right now, by the way. Okay. Do I still sound like a robot?
A little bit, but it's holding steady.
2024. Okay. Donald Trump says, we have a 4-5 court. It's 4 conservatives, 5 liberals. I'm going to tell the Senate to add 2 more Supreme Court justices.
They would not do it.
You don't think they would do it? Okay. I don't have the same faith that they would. I think they would if they thought it would benefit them. I really do think they would.
Really?
Yes.
Destiny, we have an example. Do you understand that before you were to do something like that, do you know what you would have to do before you do that?
You would just need 51 votes in the Senate.
You would need to get rid of the filibuster. You would need to get rid of the filibuster to do that.
Didn't they already get rid of the filibuster for the McConnell, that was the whole point of the whole nuclear option to do their...
No. That is for judicial appointments, not legislation. If you wanted to do what you're asking, the packing
judicial
Supreme Court...
appointments, we're talking about the Supreme Court. You don't need legislation to pack the court.
Yes, you do. What are you talking about? You absolutely need a bill from Congress if you want to pack the court.
I don't believe so. I don't think that's...
Yes.
Is the current 9-member thing called...
But what do you mean? Who would decide it then?
I don't think that 9 members of the Supreme Court is in legislation anywhere. Would you? Or is it?
I want you to just look this up right now. Just look it up.
Okay.
Do you need the Congress to pack the court?
Why are there 9 members of Supreme Court bench? Okay, we have the Judiciary Act of 1869. So that means that you would need a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate.
Yes.
Do you think Trump wouldn't get a majority in the House and the majority of the Senate to add 2 more justices to the Supreme Court?
No.
Okay.
1,000% no. Do you know how I know?
Why?
Because in order to do what you're saying, you would need to get rid of the filibuster. This is not the same as judicial appointments. The nuclear option was invoked to do confirming judges, not legislation. So you would have to get rid of the filibuster. Donald Trump has already asked this Republican Congress a month ago, 2 months ago, to get rid of the filibuster. You know what they did?
They said no, but he wasn't asking for anything big. There wasn't like a huge.
What do you mean? He's asking for them to get rid of the filibuster so he could like end the fight and take away Democrats' leverage and just like
but it's not like concrete legislative plans. I think if it was
Murkowski would be no. Collins would be no.
Okay.
Do you want me to keep going? Rand Paul would be no. Thune would be no. He does not have the votes right now to pack the court. No.
Okay. I completely disagree, but it's just I guess a different viewpoint on where we're at right now. Like.
You think that they would be willing to pack the court even though they have not been willing to get rid of the filibuster?
I don't think they had anything significantly in front of them in order to that would be worth getting rid of the filibuster for. That's a follow the incentives. The Republicans right now, they know they're fucked in the midterms. They might have even known day one of Trump that they're fucked in the midterms. And if they get rid of the filibuster, that's just good. First of all, Trump doesn't even give a fuck about Congress, number one. So I don't know what
does that mean?
As in, the whole point of getting rid of the filibuster is so that you can start to do a bunch of like adventurous congressional things. Democrats like to do that because we like to pass legislation. Republicans don't. What have they done? They've got their fucking tax bill in reconciliation, and that's it. So I don't know. Getting rid of the filibuster is.
They could pass the SAVE Act.
I guess, but Trump could go. Trump is going to run ICE to every fucking state anyway and do crazy shit.
Didn't you just tell me that the SAVE Act would like massively help
I think
Republicans like have control?
I think the SAVE Act would be really. Yes, I think the SAVE Act would be really, really, really bad. Yes, but I don't know if that would be. I don't know if that would be a big enough thing for them to nuke the filibuster, knowing the.
No. Hang on, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth here. You just told me a moment ago that you just told me a moment ago that the SAVE Act would be like a massive advantage for Republicans. This is what you clearly implied just like 5 minutes ago. And you're also telling me that, well, what does it matter? Donald Trump, he could just do anything he wanted to theoretically if he just asked the Congress to do it. Okay, well, why are they not getting rid of the filibuster to pass the SAVE Act?
Okay, the SAVE Act is something that would benefit Trump because Trump is a wild and wacky authoritarian. The Republicans would benefit as a byproduct of that, but absent Donald Trump, the Republicans would not try to carry the SAVE Act themselves. This is clearly a Trump-Miller-Vance project, and the Republicans are go along for the fucking ride on everything. But absent Donald Trump, I don't think a thing like this happens because I don't think that the SAVE Act is something that they would want or that would even necessarily long-term benefit them. However, if it were to come to adding 2 more conservative Supreme Court justices, I think that depending on the decisions before the court or depending on what they want to do, whether it's abortion, a thing they already won on, or whatever other fucking powers they're looking to expand for the president, that is a thing that has long-term benefits for them. I think that the Republican lawmakers are strategic, and right now the incentives align with following Trump, even on wacky and wild adventures, not that wacky and wild. Like if he wants to literally get rid of the fucking filibuster, they know that they're not going to benefit much from that, and they know it's going to fuck them hard in the future. But for packing a court for 2 more justices, if it was a 4-5 court, I think they would do that. I think the stuff under McConnell was crazy. I don't know why the same Republicans wouldn't do an even crazier thing with the Supreme Court under Trump if they had a minority in the Supreme Court.
Listen, with peace and love in my heart, I don't think that your analysis is correct here. I think you're missing the fact that there are plenty of senators, frankly, in both parties that are principally committed to the filibuster. There are plenty of Republican senators and Democratic senators that genuinely view the filibuster as a bulwark against volatile, wild swings that they think would be destabilizing. And the filibuster gives the Senate like a lot more power. It gives them just so much more influence and power. And so if you're a Senate, there's a lot of senators that just don't want to give up that power.
This Congress is going to rubber stamp on every single thing Trump does. What do you mean they're principally attached to something?
That's not true, though. That is not true.
I think it is.
No, that is not true.
Look at this
then why didn't he get rid of the filibuster, Destiny?
Because there was nothing huge for them to gain politically after that.
You just said that the Congress rubber stamps everything he wants. Why didn't they get rid of the filibuster? I don't think you can engage with this. I'm saying things, but you're running down talking points. The Republican Congress is going to act. Contradictory
no,
things.
They seem contradictory because you can't engage with the question past the level 1 analysis. But you said the Congress. I'm saying that Congress will do things that they feel like benefits them and the Republican movement in the long term, and then their political careers in the short term. Them not getting rid of the filibuster doesn't hurt any of their political careers in the short term. They all know this shit is fucked come midterms. They fucking know that. Number 1. And number 2, there's not a huge gain for them to be had by getting rid of the filibuster. Maybe it helps with maybe some aspect of the one big beautiful bill. Maybe. But they know that when Democrats come in, they're going to fucking clean shop. Pelosi passed more legislation when she was the House leader, whatever, in those 2 years than every other fucking Congress prior to her. They know that. So no, they wouldn't do that because they know that it wouldn't benefit them in the long term. So for you to say, but Dustin, you said they wouldn't get rid of the filibuster. Now you're saying they would get rid of the Supreme Court stuff because the Supreme Court stuff would benefit them in the medium and long term. Having a majority Supreme Court of conservatives benefits them so much they were willing to nuke Obama's pick over it. There's a much greater argument for them following Trump along some crazy shit like that than a filibuster abolition. Like Donald Trump doesn't even know the 2 halves of Congress.
Listen. I think you've said a couple things here that are just blatantly contradictory. You can try to reason it any way you want here.
You're not able to engage because you know that I'm right.
The idea that the proposition that this Congress would literally just rubber stamp anything that Donald Trump wants is just simply not true.
What's in it? What is the thing that? What are things that the Republicans have pushed back on Trump on?
I'd have to look at the particulars of the one big beautiful bill, but I do know that they said no to him on a few of his, like,
the one big beautiful bill that passed, right? They got that. What was it? $90 billion of ICE.
Bro, do you understand that there are different provisions in a bill?
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't get every provision, like, Biden didn't get his $15 an hour minimum wage, right? Like, there was a number of things, like didn't get a public option, right? So I would have to go back and look at the particulars, but he was pushing for some provisions that did not make it in there. He has, for example, been pressing the Republican Party to get rid of the filibuster, not only to end the shutdown fight, but also to pass things like the SAVE Act. Like, he has been very publicly pressuring this Congress to do that. And they're not doing that.
Yeah, but he also doesn't. He doesn't give a fuck about the Congress. They literally asked him after the tariff ruling. After the tariff ruling, they literally asked him, "Would you try to pass a law?" Blah, blah, blah. Donald Trump laughed. He was like, "No. What would I use Congress for?" LOL.
He doesn't give a fuck about you say he doesn't give a fuck about the Congress. Then why is he asking them to get rid of the filibuster if he doesn't give a fuck about them?
Because it gives him a little bit more. But it's not a thing that he invests a lot of time in. A little bit more? Hold on. I'm sorry. I need to check for some amount of understanding of the world, because in your mind, every single thing is like a binary 100% or 0%. You agree that a person could ask for a thing, but not really give that much of a fuck about it, right? If you would ask me right now, Dustin, do you think Donald Trump... If you would ask me, Dustin, do you think that Donald Trump wants the filibuster gone? Of course I would say yes to that. But if you would ask me, does he give that much of a fuck about it? No, not really. No.
Well, he's tweeted dozens of times about it.
He's tweeted thousands of times about fucking everything.
He's putting public pressure on this Republican Party. This is not the first time he's done that. He did that throughout his first
come
term.
on. Who is he threatened to run against? Who is he attacking or fighting with so hardcore unless I've missed it? Where is all the public pressure on the fucking filibuster? I've totally missed it if that's...
This is not the first time that he has called for them to get rid of the filibuster. He did it earlier in this term. He did it throughout his first term.
He's called for a million things, but you think
he did it his first term? He did it his first term as well.
Do you think
you keep making these you're doing? Remember what I told you about when I said the Green Lantern theory of politics?
Yeah, but I don't think... Did you explain it to me?
You're doing, wait, you don't remember? So fuck, man. It was in the context of when I argue with lefties and they're like, why didn't Biden just get a public option done? Or,
sure.
I'm sure you heard the logic. I'm sure you heard the logic of Kyle Kalinske saying that you should threaten Joe Manchin's daughter with criminal prosecution or whatever. These are examples of lefties who say, well, he should have just whipped the votes. He should have just done this. He should have. What you're doing is reverse Green Lantern, where you think that Donald Trump is this all powerful guy. And there's no question. There is no question that he rules his party by fear. And he does get a lot from this Congress. He gets probably most of what he asked for. I think I would very comfortably say that. But they do say no from time to time. And he is bound by the Constitution in the sense that he can't just ignore the Congress to do everything that he wants.
But he literally is. Can't. He ignores them for war.
He's literally not.
He ignores them for tariffs. He ignores them for all international negotiations.
You don't need the Congress to explore the kind of legal avenues that he's using to do these tariffs. He's not, for example, just if he didn't need
these are not legal avenues. He knows he's acting lawless.
If he doesn't need the Congress, then why are we even in a shutdown fight? Why are we doing negotiations for DHS funding? He can just do it, right?
With the tariffs. Also, hold on. Didn't he literally explicitly do that? Didn't he literally explicitly have some part of ICE privately fucking funded while the government was shut down? Did he actually explicitly do this?
I know not what you're talking about, but you told me a moment ago that he can just do whatever he wants. He doesn't even need the Congress, and you're kind of making the case that we're sort of on the way to being Why do you fucking do this, bro?
Because you're going on this binary. Because there are obviously there are a couple things. I'm saying that. You told me that.
By and large, he doesn't need the Congress.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was wrong. No, I'm telling you I was wrong. I'm wrong. I shouldn't have said he doesn't need the Congress. I said that I should have said he largely acts without Congress in all the capacities that he should require Congress for, but there are still a couple things, like passing a budget, for instance, or maybe getting confirmation picks that he does need the Congress for. Okay? Is that okay? Yeah. Is that better? Okay.
Yes, that's better.
The amount of lawlessness that he's acting, though, absent the Congress, is historical, unacceptable, and they're not legal explorations. They're blatant lawlessness, like tariffing the entire world. and collecting $200+ billion from American importers, or like going to war with everybody, or threatening war with everybody, and not even informing Congress of anything's going on beforehand. I think these are bad things.
Agree.
And I think they're lawless things.
Oh, shit. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, I agree. If you're making the case that this presidency is uniquely corrupt and lawless, I agree.
But then I don't know how we can pass reforms for a lawless administration.
You win elections.
But what I'm saying, I know, but why would they hold to future reforms if they're lawless?
At this point, I mean, I feel like you're kind of making the point that you're just like, again, this feels like a very, if what you're saying is reforms are pointless because you can just be lawless in the future, what argument are you actually making there? At that point, you're saying, well, the system itself is just, it was a mistake, and we gave it our best shot.
The system requires good faith actors, and right now the Republican Party is not a good faith actor, and you can't legislate them back to good faith acting. You might have to do a little bit of bad faith acting to get them there.
Well, what are we talking about with bad faith acting?
What my example before about using Congress to investigate every single fucking Republican.
I'm on board.
You're not on board with that. Your position is just business as usual.
Am.
No, you're not. Your position was
what are you
first you said
about destiny.
I can explain it.
Am.
I can explain it. You said I gave the suggestion earlier, and you said you're stealing my suggestion, and then I said, oh, then we agree, and you said, yeah, if there is an example of a crime happening or something illegal happening, then a congressional committee should have oversight over that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we turn every single Republican that's part of this administration into Hunter Biden. That's what I'm saying. They're not the same thing.
Yes.
And if you agree with my perspective there, which you eventually came around to, the thing that we didn't really resolve was that is not a good way to use Congress. But that is an illiberal, unconstitutional, not nice, not good way of. That's a system-breaking thing. The Congress can't function if they act like that.
One of the things that I've been telling my chat is like a reason to stay engaged and to take special elections seriously and to keep that energy up as we go into the midterms. I've been telling this every fucking day that we are going to take that gavel back and harass the ever-living fuck out of every Republican in that administration and anybody else that they feel like they have the right to do that. They can do that. The Congress can do that. There's nothing like violating by doing that. They can open investigations if they want to. Like Democrats did that, Republicans did that. That's what happens every single time. The gavel changes hands every single time in the last like 30 years.
It doesn't. Why are you saying? Hold on. Wait. What is the Democrat equivalent to the Hunter Biden investigations, to the Hillary Clinton Benghazi or email investigations?
The Congress led by Democrats have literally subpoenaed. You have no fucking idea.
I don't. No, tell me. I don't have any idea. Tell me. Make me feel better about it. Go. Tell me. Make me feel better. Yes.
The Congress led by Democrats literally subpoenaed the Trump kids' fucking tax returns, bro. They did investigate them.
I'm trying to think. Have I seen a single Trump? If I seen a single person with the last name Trump giving public testimony or having to give private testimony in front of Congress ever? Has that ever happened? Does anyone know? Maybe it hasn't. I just don't know. But has that ever happened?
What'd you say?
Has there ever been a Trump having to give testimony in front of Congress ever? Or at least over the past like 15 years or whatever? Has that ever happened? Any of his kids, they were hauled up in front of Congress to do...
Yes! The January 6th subcommittee, bro. Yes.
Did they testify on that, or did they plead the fifth on everything?
Did they not have to testify? Hang on.
Well, they could have. First of all, the J6 stuff committee is not what I'm talking about. That's like a good reason to subpoena somebody. That's not comparable to the Hunter Biden stuff, which was just
You are shifting the goalposts.
Oh my God,
bro.
I'm not. You're just.
Yes, you are. No. Yes, you absolutely are.
Because I'm saying we need to use the Congress like they've been using it. And you're like, yeah, bro, I agree. We should investigate. And I'm like, what's the equivalent to the Hunter Biden stuff? The Hunter Biden series of investigations were an entire expedition of bullshit by the Republicans to fuck with Joe Biden. And you're like, well, what about the J6 subcommittee? When they tried to coup the government, those are not the same thing. What the J6 committee was actually investigating actual serious fucking wrongdoing. The Hunter Biden shit was just a weaponization of Congress to harass political...
What?
To go find the mortgage fraud, find the unpaid parking tickets and see if you can upgrade them to felony convictions, that type of shit. The same type of shit they did to Hunter Biden. Which you could disagree with, that's fine, but don't pretend we have the same position, because we don't. You just want to use Congress as you're supposed to, as it normally is supposed to be used. But that's not how the Republicans have used it, right?
But didn't I get you to concede? Didn't I get you to concede earlier in the conversation that there is a point where you go with your authority in the Congress that would backfire, and the public would view that as overreach.
Yes.
Didn't you agree with that?
Yeah.
There's a really good example of this is Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, during his second term, he was being investigated by Ken Starr, and they were doing the Whitewater, and they found the Monica Lewinsky thing. That backfired, and it led to a shitty midterm performance in 1998. They literally were punished electorally for that overreach. Now, 2 years later, George W. Bush went on to win the presidency. But
Bill
we
Clinton,
don't evaluate
the second president in all of history to be impeached.
And it backfired, is my point. Destiny, it backfired. They suffered consequences for that in the 98 midterms.
And then they won the next presidency and got us into 2 historically crazy wars with a...
But they would have had bigger majorities when Bush won had they not paid a price in 1998. You can't just appeal to like, well, shit gets fucked in the future to, completely invalidate.
That's exactly what I'm appealing to, because you're
gains.
appealing to all of these short-term, minor, inconsequential wins while I'm saying the trend is very bad. And you're like, but what about when they had this small...
But you're appealing to some like nirvana state. You want to compare potential short-term gains, and the way that you undermine the value of these things is you appeal to something worse happening like 2 years after that. And that's just not how we evaluate political decisions. Like, nobody can give you a fucking 10-year or 50-year plan. You do have to stay present in the moment and just make the best decisions that are in front of you. Okay?
They did
pay a price for overreach. But no, even
the
current administration.
I'm curious. Sure. Okay, wait. So I'm just curious. Do you feel?
No. Let me make my point. Hang on. The current administration, the current Republican Party, they are paying a price for their overreach, for their corruption. Yes, right now we are witnessing that. Right now, just because you say, well, how do I know that Vance isn't going to get elected in 2032? You don't. But that doesn't change the fact that right now they're losing seats. They're gonna get blown out in November because of their corruption and overreach, bro.
On the Clinton thing, do you think that if you were to ask Republicans right now, if you could push a button and undo the whole Clinton stuff, do you think they would say yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We just totally fundamentally disagree, I think.
What did they get for it? What the fuck did they get for it?
They managed to historically disgrace a Democratic president in a way that follows the Democratic Party to some extent even to this day. It probably hurt Hillary Clinton a lot. It might have arguably helped them.
It hurt them
with relation to winning for Trump.
Any competent political party, if they could go back and reverse something that lost them seats in the Congress, they would go back and do that.
You already admitted that there might be times where you could lose seats and it would ultimately be beneficial.
Hold on, you say they disgraced the Clinton family or whatever. Do you understand that Hillary Clinton went on for up until 2015 during the primaries, and when all that got fucked, she was like one of the most popular politicians in the entire fucking country. Like, the Republican Party made her more sympathetic through that process. That's why she had like a fucking 70% approval rating when she was Secretary of State.
Are you sure that wasn't just because Obama was the president and Obama had like one of the largest electoral...
No, she was wildly popular. What? Hillary Clinton was wildly popular in this country.
I don't...
in the first, like...
I don't think
Look it up, bro. I'm not making this up. She had insane approval numbers, bro.
She lost to Obama in the primary to even be the president, and Republicans were able to drag her infinitely after...
What I'm saying. That doesn't negate what I'm saying. You're saying, well, I'm sure they wouldn't have gone back and reversed their decision to impeach Bill Clinton because it like disgraced the Clinton family or whatever. She was one of the most popular politicians in the entire fucking country until like 2015. And shit went south when like WikiLeaks and Bernie Sanders and all that, like everything got fucked, and the Russian interference and all that. But she was insanely popular. She went on to win a Senate seat in New York. And she was widely regarded as the clear frontrunner to win in 2008. Barack Obama was a fucking freak of nature, just a generational talent when it came to politics. And, and then by the time she came around, she was up against like undercurrents that had been fomenting in this country as a result of the bank bailout and all kinds of shit. But like, she would have been insanely popular as president if she would have won in 2008. It wouldn't, and the fucking, all the impeachment stuff with Bill Clinton, it just literally helped her. It made her more sympathetic. They made her stronger in the short term.
Okay, I would have to go back and check on everything for a sanity check on that. I'm vibing that that's not right, but maybe it's because I was in a conservative family that hated Hillary Clinton. But
No, well, your conservative family, I'm sure they did, but that didn't change the fact that she was insanely popular for the 21st century up until like we got to 2015. And then it all went sideways. But even then, like, it didn't go sideways for her because of Bill Clinton's fucking impeachment. It had to do with like Benghazi and email stuff and Russian disinformation bots and all that shit. It wasn't Bill Clinton. That's not the reason.
Sure, I don't think that Bill Clinton would have been the sole reason, for sure. I just don't think that Republicans would ever give that they managed to get an impeachment on Bill Clinton after the fishing expedition with Ken Starr. I think that Republicans are probably largely happy with that result, but I don't know how we could ever resolve that. So.
I don't think they were happy with that result. You should go back and look. They did get punished in those midterms. It did,
I mean,
and it
what
was
did they
widely
lose
regarded
from 99, 2000? What did they lose as a result of losing those midterms? What were some huge things that...
I'm reminded of the debate that you and I had where we were having that debate with, was it Cam Higbee and Actual Justice Warrior. If you're just going to appeal, well, like something bad happened, like 6 years after that, that is just not how we evaluate.
I didn't say something bad.
Politics,
I'm saying that when they lost if you're saying if they paid some electoral price in Clinton's midterms or whatever as a result of the whole Monica Lewinsky thing, what did they lose anything from that? Like, was there like some big piece of legislation they wanted to fight against or some big thing that they didn't want to confirm or something as a result of
all of that? Every midterm matters. Like if you brought up 2022 before, then you brought up the fact that the Republican Party didn't have the best midterm cycle. They only won like a bare, what was it, like a 8-seat majority in the House or something like that. And Democrats picked up a Senate seat in that election. Because of that midterm election 4 years ago, we are now the Democrats. It's going to be a little bit more difficult now because it looks like Cornyn's got Trump's endorsement and he's going to be the nominee and he's just a tougher candidate to beat. But the fact that the fact that it's even possible in the first place that the Democrats could possibly take back the Senate this year is because we had a good cycle in 2022 when we ran the board against Donald Trump's hand-chosen extreme picks like Blake Masters and fucking Kari Lake. These things ripple and have consequences that last for 2, 4, 6 years.
Sure, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I mean, McConnell came in saying that he was going to block almost every single thing Obama wanted to do, and it seemed like he was fairly successful at doing that, and that culminated in his blocking of the Supreme Court pick in the last term for Obama. So I
what does that have to do? What does that have to do with Bill Clinton? Like it's almost like you're trying to find any rationale to dismiss the idea that the public. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just like, you're saying that they paid the reality is that you might be right on this, and this is an idea that I have never in my entire life heard anybody make the argument that Republicans politically regretted going after Bill Clinton. I've never heard that. So I'm not even prepared to contend that idea. You might actually be correct, and it's just a novel idea that I've never in my life I ever heard somebody say, yeah, Republicans regret the whole Monica Lewinsky stuff. It was a mistake for them to go after Bill Clinton on that and get that impeachment. I've never heard that in my entire life. But maybe it's true. Maybe there are people that talk about it. I just haven't engaged with that media because back then I was a super Republican because I was, but so I don't know. Listen, I don't know what to tell you, but like it is widely known that the Republicans massively overreached with that impeachment trial and that it boosted Bill Clinton's approval ratings and it hurt Republicans in the short term. And they paid a price for that. It's lesser known about like the midterms, but they could have won more seats in those midterms. And my understanding is 1998 was actually a good midterm cycle for Democrats, which is not normal for a second term president to have a good midterm performance like that. That's just not really normal. Usually the incumbent party has like pretty bad midterms to one degree or another.
Yeah, I'm aware.
I mean, it seems like you're pushing back against like the idea of overreach being punished by the voters and like.
Well, I am pushing back against that because largely speaking, I don't think it is punished by the voters. I think that.
But it's happening right now, Destiny. It's happening literally right now, man.
Yeah, I understand, but it's like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like the Republicans are taking 1 step back after taking 2 steps forward, and then this happens over and over again. We keep saying, well, look, they're getting hurt on the midterms here. Look, Biden prevented the huge red wave. Look, we managed to win in 2020. It's like, sure, but like whole sections of the federal government have been axed. Irreparable harm has been done to our international reputation. We're on the verge of leaving NATO as Spain is about to, or France is about to position nukes everywhere. We've deposed 2 world leaders now without any input from Congress whatsoever. Like, and it's like, well, well, they're going to get crushed in the midterms. It's like, okay, I guess. But in 2032 now, looking at all the things Trump was able to achieve, let's say you get a Vance or a Miller or somebody more popular who's able to run, then you're going to do the exact same shit. And that's a loss, in my opinion.
I could just as soon turn to you and say, well, I'm pretty confident in your scenario that in 2036 we'll elect AOC and we'll have like a 65-seat majority because Vance, like I could appeal to some utopian vision to follow up your dystopian
but the difference is we're trending
vision.
in my direction, not yours. You have no evidence that we're trending in your direction.
But no.
Right? Wait, do you agree that the Republicans are trending more authoritarian regime-ish?
No, yes, but I'm talking about political power. I'm talking about like the progress of America. And I got you earlier in the conversation.
Do you agree that
we're trending in the right direction, right?
No, over 50, 100, 200 years, yes.
Yes.
But I asked you over the last 30 years and you said, well, that's a lot harder. I feel like Republicans are trending. I think they're trending
in a better direction.
I think Republicans are trending more authoritarian, more corrupt in terms of how they leverage all of their different levers of power. And I don't see any reversal of that or why they would even reverse that.
Okay, well, listen. I mean, nobody can tell you like how to fix this. Like nobody can tell you like, oh, it's easy. All you got to do is this to like make sure that the Republican Party like stop going insane. And all these like perverse incentives in the media to like just blatantly lie and obfuscate deliberately for these like cynical reasons. Like
I agree with you.
Nobody has easy answers.
I agree with you. It's hard, but I just want to be clear. When you say go insane, I don't think I know that you're just using figure of speech, but I'll clarify. They're not going insane. They're acting rationally. They should do these things. The Republican Party in 2032 should try to lie as much as possible. They should try to rig as many media things as they can, work up and down vertically through the entire Republican establishment, selling lies, fear, to be corrupt as possible, steal money in whatever ways through whatever cryptocurrency. Because why not? Like they win elections doing it. It's gotten more blatant and more corrupt and more rigged than it has in the past 30 years as they've trended in this direction. So why wouldn't they continue doing it? I don't think changing the Electoral College is going to make them take a wildly different approach.
Listen, I am a new proud Second Amendment celebrator. I have a Anaconda Colt 44 Magnum. I have a 9mm, M&P 2.0 compact. I'm working on my aim and. Listen, like if the day ever comes where like shit pops off, like I'm not like I didn't buy these guns for no reason. It is what it is. But I'm just saying in the meantime, until we get to the point where
wouldn't I want to try extra legal things before like Civil War? Why is your go-to Civil War immediately?
Well,
why
extra
not
legal things?
Well, that's what the current admin is doing. You just call them testing the boundaries of law. So I would hope that we would also say the same thing. Okay, then
with me about that.
Okay,
so they're breaking the law. Yes, they're breaking the law. They're breaking the law. This is a lawless administration. Yes, they're breaking the law. Yes.
So I think bringing that back in line, I think would be a good thing. I think trying to do that, even using extra legal, illegal, whatever the fuck things, is better than immediately jumping to civil war. So
here's what I want you to do, okay? Yeah. Like, I want to treat your proposition with an open mind, with a genuine open mind, okay? Mm-hmm. Play the tape out even more. So like, you do your thing. I mean, fine. We don't get into specifics. I think the specifics really fucking matter, but don't even touch the specifics. But we just generally kind of do extra legal things. We do Hunter Biden things, and et cetera, et cetera. What happens? Like, how are you at that point, like giving me assurances that Vance doesn't have a shot in 2032?
Well, in my mind, in my ideal scenario, you're making the arguments to the American public. The American public is finally revealed to or is seeing how corrupt and lawless the prior administration has been on so many different levels. They support the whatever ways you find to hold these people accountable. And then in the future, when even if J.D. Vance wants to run again, he's thinking, well, okay, I'm going to run again, but I'm not going to do any of that wild and wacky crazy shit that Trump did because I know that it's going to fuck me. And I'm not going to have any political support ever either. And nobody's going to want to be in my cabinet because they all know they're going to get fucked too.
I don't understand like why you have that kind of confidence in the American people after January 6th. And we did do an impeachment. We did have a select subcommittee. It wasn't enough to get,
I have to because I want to believe that we're like a sustainable democratic system. In your world, America's fucked. And who the fuck cares?
But you would have to reverse a really long trend of there's going to be like a significant chunk of the population that are just not super engaged.
I agree. And I think that's a trend that we have to reverse. And if we don't reverse that trend, then I want to go be in a Chinese point of my life because fuck this country. What a disgusting, terrible piece of shit fucking country that's bombing other people around the planet, that's setting up concentration camps in fucking, El Salvador to ship off brown people to, that's forcing 15-year-old fucking girls to die on operating tables because they can't have fucking abortions. That's not in America that I want to debate about these fucking things every single day. That's crazy to me. I would rather dip. with my money and peace the fuck out. And the fact that you think like, I think that's a worthy fight that we need to be fighting on whether or not we should turn children into incubators or whether or not the president should have the unlimited power to murder people because he's criminally immune. That's not a fight that I give a fuck about. I'm so disinterested in that fight. But that's also just me speaking personally. Maybe other people think that that's a fight worth having for. I think we should fight before that point and try to prevent that America from coming around using more harsh means where we fight against that rather than waiting until everything is completely fucked to be like, okay, fuck, now we got to try to really turn this motherfucker around. That's where my mind is. The America that you're talking about fighting in is one that I've already lost interest in. That's for me. But I feel like for anybody that's like liberally interested, I feel like there's going to be a similar feeling there that if you realize like this shit is so fucked, why the fuck fighting for reforms or whatever shit at that point? That's just crazy to me.
Well, you will have that option if you want to peace out, and if it gets to that point. But in my mind, I'm not trying to set myself up for some kind of massive disappointment, and so the only way that I can keep my head on straight and stay sane and not like totally give into a black pill is just by focusing on what's in front of me. Right now, we have midterms coming up in 6 months. After that, we'll have the primaries. After that, we'll have a general.
I agree. Doesn't contradict anything I've said at all, but I agree with you. Yes.
Why are you getting saucy with me?
Because you're presenting this as a contradiction to my point. It's like, Dusty, I know you want to do these things. I want to win the elections. What, like I don't? It's not. I need to win the elections for my point to come into place. Right?
You seem to be operating with this kind of strategy of like assuming the worst. Unless we adopt I just have a different victory condition. In your mind, if we win 28, I don't know what the fuck year it is. If 28, yes. You're in your mind, if we win 2028, and let's say JD Vance or Stephen Miller runs for president, okay? And let's say that 2028 rolls around, and let's say that we win 300 to 200 or whatever electoral college. In your mind, that's a huge victory. In my mind, it's over. Everything is fucked at that point. If that's where we're at, but in your mind, that's like, okay, good, we can fight from here, guys. I think that's a really. I think that is a very unproductive, unhelpful way to look at things.
Yeah, but what is unproductive or unhelpful for you is destructive to not only your own population, but the rest of the fucking world. America anointed itself as the leader of the free world at the end of World War II, and to abdicate that because voters can't pay attention, then fuck them. Then we should have voter tests. If that's going to be your answer, then the only policies you should be pushing for on stream are IQ tests and voting tests to even show up at the fucking ballot box. Because if the average fucking American is going to be in charge of the most powerful fucking military on the planet and the largest economy on the planet, and they can't take 2 fucking seconds to understand our impact on the rest of the world, then they don't have the right to fucking vote. Throw them in a fucking cage and tell them to sit out election day. That's crazy to me. There has to be a responsibility that goes along with the voting. That's insane to me that we could vote for a democratic regime or a fascist one by 300 to 200. That's wild that you think that's an acceptable state of affairs while the rest of the world looks on at us like, holy shit, I hope there's not inflation for 1 year again or else they might actually fucking nuke Greenland this time. That's crazy to me.
Why would you present my situation, my point of view, as though I think the current conditions are tenable in the long run or acceptable? I obviously don't. What you're failing to connect is that just because I reject your proposition for being fantastical and just completely unrealistic and not serious, you think that means I don't care about these things. And it's just worthless virtue signaling. Of course I care about these things. Of course I do. I care about them so much that I'm telling my audience, and like what I'm trying to stress to people is that you need to win every single fucking election for the rest of your fucking life. You need to stay engaged and vote in every fucking election for the rest of your life. You need to be prepared to do that for the rest of your life. You're telling people, well, we may have to like move to China in 4 years.
No. You're telling
I could just as soon turn around and tell you don't care about these people suffering,
and I could
because you would rather peace off to China.
Tell you the same thing, that you're okay ceding ground after ground of essential rights as long as we're still voting, and the ship might be sinking eventually, but if we keep scooping out buckets of water, it'll sink a little bit slower.
Ground. What do you mean? When have I ever said seed ground? What are you talking about?
So we've lost abortion in the United States. We've lost USA, the Department of Education, things we've talked about.
I didn't seed ground. I voted for Hillary Clinton, bro. That would have stopped.
But these are
more people voted for Hillary Clinton. That wouldn't have happened.
We've lost these things to authoritarian rule. That shouldn't have happened. I don't think the president even has the authority to destroy these departments, and he did it.
How is my strategy contributing to ceding ground when I'm telling people vote? I've never voted for a Republican ever in my life.
Because your victory position is that we can barely beat the fascists in all of our elections, and even if we're losing these things every time they swing back into power, It's okay.
I will take a short-term victory. I will take a short-term victory, even if it's marginal, if it means that it keeps us in the fight for like another couple of years. But of course, the goal would be to have like sweeping mandates. Like I'm not content with just small majorities. I want to build a coalition that can replicate the kind of majorities that we saw during LBJ. That's been a big part of the discourse in lib spaces with like Ezra Klein talking about like unconventional coalitions. So it's not like I'm not thinking about like how to expand these majorities. Of course I'm thinking about that. I'm the guy who's like fucking getting shit from fucking Westside Tyler because I said that I would literally vote for a segregationist if it meant getting a Senate majority. If it's like, 49 normal Democrats and a segregationist.
I don't disagree with the strategy that you're talking about. I just think that the end goal is different in that there has to be an eradication of the incentives and the acceptance of those incentives for conservatives to act in the way that they do. But you're saying that
I don't think you can eradicate entirely an incentive to be corrupt. What you can do is to strengthen the system and strengthen the guardrails against that kind of corruption. That's what we've done for 250 years. That's been the whole project, man.
Yeah, but over the past 30-ish years, this has been failing. And I just don't see any course correction coming from winning the next election, and that's it. Like there needs But your solution doesn't provide a guarantee that corruption's never going to come back. You think it does, but it doesn't. I didn't say that. I never said it's a guarantee, but I'm saying that yours guarantees that it will remain forever because everybody's still incentivized to be corrupt in your system. That's what I'm saying. Mine might have a higher fail rate, but yours has an absolute fail rate that just takes a little bit longer to fully realize.
But you haven't coherently explained to me how your proposition eliminates an incentive to be corrupt. Because people get held accountable.
In the future,
wait, hang on a second. Destiny,
yes.
We have laws and we have prison sentences for serious felonies. That doesn't eliminate crime, right? Like people are still going to be motivated by self-interest. And if they sense an exploitation or sense a...
Do you think the criminal justice system doesn't disincentivize crime at all? You think people would do the exact same amount of crime if there was no criminal justice system?
No, of course, but it doesn't eliminate it altogether.
Oh my God.
So, like,
is that your position that I'm saying you have to have a 100% elimination? Why are you doing this binary thing? You do this, by the way, a lot in conversation. You're saying it has to be a binary. Here's what I'm saying. There will be zero criminal charges.
You told me that I have...
Go ahead. Wait, hello?
I find it funny that you think that, like, when I talk about reforms... There were a slew of reforms that were passed in the post-Nixon era that came with like criminal penalties for certain things if they were violated. So I am talking about in terms of these reforms. I'm not just talking about like term limits for the Supreme Court or getting rid of the Electoral College. I'm frankly not wonky enough to tell you, like, I don't think I'm qualified to tell you, like, what particular reforms we could codify at the federal level to disincentivize this kind of corruption. But, that is what I'm talking about. I am talking about increasing penalties, establishing criminality for certain actions that have taken place during this presidency. And to the extent that this, Supreme Court has ruled that presidents are immune, I am not opposed to extreme measures to rebalance the court, to revisit that question, and possibly, implement more reforms even down the line to, clarify these things and not totally shield the presidency from immunity. I do think that is a priority that we should focus on in the long term, is finding a way to revisit that opinion, because I think it's just until you address that, this is just going to be something that is just very easily exploited. But that is how you do it in our system. You do it through the system. You do go through Congress. You do go through the courts.
No, wait. We do. The Democrats do. The Republicans don't. The Democrats do, but not the Republicans, to be fair. There's two different rule books right now.
Well, I mean, I don't really know what that means. I mean, like, you're not really refuting my point, right? Like, you do need to do these reforms,
all the
right?
charges against Donald Trump federally were dismissed. I doubt they're going to be brought back. Nobody in Trump's current administration is going to be criminally charged with anything.
About that now. What are we supposed to do about that at this point?
I understand you're saying that, but Republicans will remember that in the future. If they're currently acting in a way that is lawless or is pushing the boundaries, they know, well, they can't do anything right now about it. Maybe they'll do some reforms LOL in the future if they ever get elections again.
Yeah, but I understand, but I don't know what are we supposed to do about that now?
Well, if there's a reform
that we can pass to retroactively, if there's a reform that we can pass to retroactively,
then it's over. Like, because then they're just going to keep
doing
the same crazy shit over and over and over again.
I think you're setting up your audience by, like talking about these things, and when they don't happen, they're going to go along with your black pilled shit. And I think it would be better if your audience was like fucking engaged.
But they're not your version. You are the black pill version. I just don't think you realize it.
No, I'm not.
You are.
Because
you're saying having slight electoral victories over a lawless fascist authoritarian party is a massive victory.
I'm not. I didn't say that. Why do you keep mischaracterizing the things?
Because
that I'm
I feel
saying?
like
I will take. If we did get a small victory, and it's just like a 9-seat majority, I'm going to be really disappointed with that this year. Okay, I'm not going to be happy until it's like a 25, 30, 35 seat majority. But if it's an 8-seat, 10-seat majority, I will take that victory in the short run. But the long-term goal remains the same. Okay. I'm not over here expecting every single fucking problem and every single corrupt action to be perfectly disincentivized in the next like 5 fucking years. Okay. I'm prepared for a long fight. That's where I'm at. I don't think we should ever give up that fight. That's what I'm saying. But I think we can get there. That's the difference between you and me. Like, I'm not resigned to this idea.
No, that's not true. I think we can get there. I do think we can get there. I think in order to get there requires like some brave and maybe creative legal actions to do it. I don't think that we can I think that right now the system is set up and it heavily favors Republicans in a lot of different ways. And so they're going to continue to, I just don't see why in your world, Donald Trump too should run again in 2032 or whatever. Like, why wouldn't he? Doing all the same corrupt shit, all the same rigged media, all the same rigged Russian bots, all the same everything else, knowing that as long as they don't break any of the current laws, maybe, they won't be held accountable after their administration ends.
I don't know what you think the point of reforms are, but the point of reforms in this context is to criminalize certain things, is to address.
Okay, I don't think you understand what reforms are. I don't think you. This is not a systemic problem that we're having right now. It is a bad faith actor problem. I don't think you believe that or you understand that, and that's why you're trapped in this world of like, what law do I pass? This is another analogy to piss you off. No, a friend shows up and he stabs you at Monopoly, and you're like, well, we need to make it against the rules next time to bring a knife to a Monopoly game. Like, no, what the fuck? He's just gonna break a gun. You can't reform your way out of a guy who is what?
It's not that I'm trapped in some machination or something like that. I exist in reality. Okay, your proposals that you're throwing out there, the win conditions that you're setting, are not workable. They're not going to happen. Governor Gavin Newsom is not going to have the freedom to, add 13 justices. And when I say that, you deflect to, well, Donald Trump can just get whatever he wants. And then when I say, no, he didn't. He couldn't even get the fucking filibuster to be scrapped in the Senate. You say, well, that's because, they don't really need anything
because
right now.
it's not a thing that he really wants.
You have these like ways
Do you think
of like
Donald Trump not getting
leapfrogging over the points that I'm making.
Just to be clear, because you're saying leapfrogging, okay? I want you to seriously get this question. Do you think that anybody in MAGA or any Donald Trump person or any of like the huge Donald Trump supporters are like, oh my God, we didn't get the filibuster destroyed? You really think that's a loss that they're feeling?
I mean, some of them, yeah.
We are reflecting.
If you go and look at all these, what are you talking about? Do you follow right wingers? They were for sure trying to be like, you got to listen to President Trump. We got to get rid of the filibuster.
Yeah, they said it was not. They barely talk about it. This is not a loss that they feel hardcore. They don't even care about Congress. Trump doesn't do anything with the fucking Congress. He doesn't give a fuck about them. He jokes about not doing anything with the Congress. Look at all the fucking Epstein shit that they are joking with Congress about.
Well, Epstein is another good example. I mean, he was pressuring Congress to not release the Epstein files, and there was so much pressure on them from the public that they had to.
But then he stopped. But then he literally stopped. He stopped giving a fuck about it. He literally said, "I don't care anymore."
Well, but it's hurt him. I mean, it's hurt him, and like that was one thing he asked Congress to not do, and they said, "Well, no, we're not gonna. We have to release it." I mean, there was way too much pressure on them.
Eventually, but it was with heavy redactions. We still haven't gotten all the files yet. They haven't had to sit for any depositions. They're trying to use it right to attack the Clintons. Like, is the Epstein thing a big victory on the Democrat side for you?
I don't know if it's like a big victory, but are you disagreeing that it's a vulnerability for this administration?
I think it is. I mean, I think it's largely self-created.
Okay,
I just don't think that.
Yes.
I just don't think that Trump, in the grand scheme of all the things that he's done, I don't think Trump's engagement with Congress is like a thing that is like a make or break for the administration. I don't think they care that much about like the filibuster. Like if you could trade, like let's say Donald Trump, you get rid of the filibuster instead of being allowed to depose Maduro. Would you? He's like, nah, fuck, I want to do the Maduro shit. Or what about the filibuster or your global fucking tariffs? Nah, I want the fucking tariff shit. Like I just don't think that he doesn't care about his Congress. Fucking when Marjorie Taylor Greene resigned, Republicans were literally bitching about this, where they were like, we are basically fucking completely and totally ignored in Congress because Donald Trump doesn't do anything with us ever.
Wait, what point were you making in response to what point I was making?
You're pointing to the fact that Trump doesn't get all the things he wants because he hasn't gotten rid of the filibuster. I think he kind of wants to get rid of the filibuster, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think a bigger deal to him is being able to control the Federal Reserve, which I don't know at this point if he's going to get that or not based on the nomination.
I mean, you just said he doesn't. You just said he doesn't need Congress because he can do whatever he wants anyway. So, like, why hasn't he successfully ousted Powell? Powell's going to serve out the rest of his term. He's wanted to get rid of Powell this whole time.
A few months. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, but why didn't he do it day one? He can do whatever he wants, right? He doesn't need Congress. He doesn't listen to the courts. Why didn't he do that day one? You don't think he wanted to lower those interest rates so he could fucking temporarily juice the economy up?
You're right. I'm sorry. Let me correct myself. When I said he can do whatever he wants, I don't mean that literally, if Donald Trump willed his ability to fly, he would be able to actually do every single thing that he wants to do. Or if he were to tell Congress he wants all the women to show up naked to work, I don't think that Trump could do literally every single thing that he wants to do. I'm sorry, I was speaking hyperbolically. Okay. What I've said is that the lion's share of Trump's agenda, not all, my bad, almost all, or maybe all the major things that Trump has wanted to effect in his administration, I think he's largely been able to do these without having to involve Congress in any of it.
I don't even disagree that the bulk of his agenda he's able to do with just like executive authority, or in some cases be lawless, right? And like make his pitch to the courts and sometimes even ignore the courts. But this goes back to the thing that I was talking about before with the interview between Brian Tyler Cohen and Barack Obama. These are just like fundamentally different sets of goals, and what you need, the mechanisms by which you pursue those goals, are stacked against the Democrats. We need to build consensus in a way that the Republican Party don't. Like, he can just do a big chunk of Project 2025 on his own without Congress. They did some of the stuff through like one big beautiful bill or whatever, but a lot of it he can just do himself. Whereas the Democrats, like, what are our voters, demanding? Like, the Democratic voter base are demanding significant healthcare reform, going well beyond what the ACA did. They're asking for significant like immigration reform, pathway to citizenship. Like, all of these things require either a 60 vote consensus in the Senate or enough people to get rid of the filibuster, and I hope that they do. But that's like one of the reforms that I'm talking about that will help level the playing field. I mean, do you disagree that getting rid of the filibuster would massively benefit Democrats and in a way that would not reach to those levels with Republicans?
Yes, for sure. I think Republicans know that as well, which is why Republicans went on board with getting rid of the filibuster.
All right, these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. It's like you're not going to have like one slam dunk policy which just makes everything better, but you can pass things at each step of the way. Just figure out what you can get past and then do that. And then, and then hopefully over time, you can do big, bold enough policy to actually deliver something for American voters that makes it easy for, 6 years down the line, be like, well, the last time we gave them a trifecta, they gave us like everybody got guaranteed subsidized healthcare and these kinds of things. But in order to do that, it's like not easy. It's like not an easy path. It is stacked against Democrats. We do have a harder job than Republicans. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Yeah. Okay. Are we... Is there anything else you want to go over? Or?
No, I'm good. I enjoyed that conversation.
Okay. I think our major disagreements are, I think one is going to be effect, that we disagree on effect. I think we would both agree with each other if we agreed on the outcomes of both of our proposed solutions. So if fighting for reforms would meaningfully constrain a future conservative party in a way that overall improves the health of our democracy, we can continue on that path, which is what you are asserting. I would agree that would be the path that we would go, I think. Right? Or no, not I think, I would. And then I think if you thought that would lead to some kind of like total democratic collapse by 2040, that we would just slowly be capitulating to Republicans and they would use that leverage to slowly erode our system, then I think you would agree that fine, we need more drastic action now. But I think that we just disagree on the outcomes of both of our proposed, I guess, like plans, kind of, or broad perspective things, right?
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I think we also fundamentally disagree about the current conditions. Like, I acknowledge that they're very, very bad, but I think you have a more pessimistic view of like the current conditions. You think that Donald Trump is much, much less constrained than what I think. And so that's causing a disconnect here as well.
Sure. Okay. I agree with those two things.
All right. Well, listen, I'll Maybe we can revisit this in like a little time, and we'll see if anything's changed. I definitely would like to check in after the midterms, because my sense is that I think if we have like a really strong midterm, and I think we will, then I think that will go a long way to helping to combat some of this black pill. And, of course, if we get to the midterms and he fucking seizes voter machines, and, maybe then I come around to your point of view.
Sure. I agree that would help. But like my biggest fear, and I think a lot of the American opinion is indexed on this at the moment, is that and it sounds really shitty to say this, but like if the last 2 years of Trump, for whatever reason, maybe AI is just fucking booming or just some crazy resurgence in tech or some bullshit, and then the economy is like soaring, that the American public basically forgets all of the unbelievably undemocratic, liberal, horrible things that Trump has done, and they're just like, it all really wasn't that bad. And then it's just a normal ass election in 2028. That would be unbelievably horrible to me.
You should steel yourself for the possibility that the American voters will let you down at some point again in your life. I promise you it's going to happen again.
Okay. And you should accept the idea that other countries around the world will hate us and deserve to hate us, and that Hassan was right when he said America deserves 9/11, because if our average voter is so disengaged from the international climate that the United States took it upon itself to be in charge of, then we deserve whatever any other country decides for us, because it is such a moral abdication that it is unfathomable that anybody could defend the state of affairs on that. I just think it's one of the most evil fucking things in the world, that there were people in Ukraine that relied on USA, that there were, all the USA shit, that's just acceptable, that the voter could quote unquote just let you down. That's just, it's so deeply immoral and unbelievable to me that that's just an acceptable state of affairs. At that point, I would push for voter tests, like very, very.
I don't mean to be cavalier. I don't mean to dismiss. Maybe I sound like that sometimes, but I'm not in my mind thinking that everything is for sure going to be fine and things aren't as bad as maybe people seem to see. I think that we're in a fucking nightmare right now. It's a conscious choice that I make to not. To just, I really do make a concerted effort to just be composed and to just try to think about things in the current moment and not spend too much time in what are the worst case scenario things that could happen. But I'm not disagreeing with anything you just said. I mean, it is shameful, like what's happening right now, and every country in the world has every right to look at America and regard us with nothing but contempt and skepticism for the short term, and that's not going to be an easy thing to fix. That is not going to be something that just we turn that around overnight. I mean, we got to build trust again, and that's probably going to take fucking decades. So,
okay. Regardless of what happens, I think winning the next set of elections is important, and I will never blackmail on that. So, I love you. Stay safe. Be careful. And yeah.
All right. Take it easy.
Have fun. Bye. Me making 20 accounts right now to shit talk Hutch on his YouTube. I'm just kidding. Can you tell Chad that Hutch was good faith? Chad is acting like Hutch is bad faith rather than just wrong. No, I don't think Hutch is bad faith. I think I identified the two areas, the big areas that we disagree with. I mean, I understand his perspective. I think he understands mine, maybe. But I don't know. The idea that, like I've said this before, I don't expect every American to be like an expert on foreign policy and an expert on domestic policy or on anything, I guess. I don't expect the average American. But like part of the underlying core of democracy is that you are, rather than entrusting a family that has been trained for generations to rule, right, like a monarchy, or rather than having a single party, single authoritarian leader, dictator, whatever, who has the best interests of the country at heart, otherwise they'll get couped and murdered, right? That's kind of how dictators or whatever operate. That we're entrusting the public to make decisions when it comes to voting, that if the public can't do anything, is just totally clueless. I think that, I just think it's a deeply unacceptable state of affairs. It just can't be that way, I think.